Morning, sound test for JDMC at 9:30 on Wednesday, the 25th of February.
Okay. Great. Good morning, everyone. My name's Peter Fane. I'm one of the councillors for Shelford Ward and chairing this committee. I'd like to welcome you all to the Joint Development and Management Committee meeting taking place here on Wednesday, 25th of February at 10 a.m. So straight in, agenda item 1. Apologies, and I won't do a roll call of members. We've all got identification badges, but I have received apologies from Councillor Flaubert, and I understand Councillor Smart will join us via Teams. I think that Councillor Bob Illingworth is subbing here for Councillor Flaubert. Good, and we are quorate, so let's get on. The officers permanently at the table, not quite permanently, but at the table for the meeting. Strategic Sites Delivery Manager Philippa Kelly, Legal Advisor Vanessa Blaine, Committee Manager Sarah Michael, and our producer for today is James Goddard. Housekeeping, the copies of the agenda can be found as usual on the City Council's website. I would suggest those in the chamber to remember that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, may be broadcast at some point. And would members please raise their hands in the usual way if they want to speak. For those participating in the meeting via the Teams, I don't think we have any members participating via the Teams. No. But usual thing, please, if you want to speak, use the chat column, but don't use that for anything else. There are no planning applications on today's committee agenda. We will, however, hear 3 pre-application briefings from developers relating to sites in North East Cambridge. And after the developer briefings, members are encouraged to ask questions or seek clarification on the presentations. I would remind members not to express any opinions on the proposals which might later imply predetermination or suggest that, but members are familiar with the procedure. Agenda item 2, please could members advise if they have any conflicts of interest to declare today. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just because the first applicant is Trinity, I have supervised for Trinity. I don't currently supervise for Trinity, so I don't think I need to step out, and this is not a planning application anyway, but I will defer to Vanessa. So I was a paid supervisor for Trinity, finishing at the end of Lent term last year.
Through the chair. No, that's fine, Councillor Williams, thank you.
Councillor Bradman.
Thank you, Chair. I am the District Council member for Milton and Waterbeach Ward, and indeed I sit on Milton Parish Council, which considers applications on Cambridge Science Park and also at the area of Cowley Road. However, I don't sit on that planning committee, and I've only attended any meetings in the capacity of asking questions. I haven't expressed opinions. So I consider myself unfettered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Stobart.
Chair, forgive me, there's this legacy question, how long ago? Because as a younger person, I was in receipt of a grant from Trinity College as part of my earlier employment at Cambridge Consultants. So it's a long time ago, but yes, it's partly made me the person I am today. So, just to note, we've got all sorts of links.
Councillor Porrer. No, I beg your pardon, Councillor Illingworth.
Yes, I'm Ward Councillor for East Chesterton, but I don't think I'm fettered in any way.
Any other declarations? I feel rather left out because I have no declarations to make, but good, thank you, members. Agenda item 3, we have, I think, all seen the minutes of the meeting on 21st of January. Can I take those as a correct record? Affirmation? You don't need a, yes, thank you. Those stand as a correct record of that meeting, and I shall sign them later. So, moving on to the main business of today, the pre-application developer briefings. Agenda item 4. Cambridge Science Park, Milton Road. Just a reminder, the process will be that the developers are invited to present for up to 20 minutes. Members of the committee will then be able to ask questions, and we will try to confine that to at most 25 minutes. I do have a certain chair's discretion in both cases, but I shall be reluctant to use it, keen to move us along. Now, I'm going to ask the developers to introduce themselves and their colleagues, and I would call on Jamie Trivedi-Bateman. Jamie, welcome. Welcome to all of you. And if you would like to introduce your colleagues, and then the floor is yours for the presentation.
Thank you very much. So I'm Jamie Trivedi-Bateman. I'm Director of Investment at Trinity College. I'm joined by Emma Woods from DP9, our planning consultants, Paul Cutler from Gummer Leeds, who are our development manager, Stuart Morse from KMC Transport, who are helping us with all things transport, and Eric Martin from Allies and Morrison, who will give the majority of this presentation, and I'll pass to you in just a moment. Before I do that, I just wanted to say very quickly, to reiterate what I said the last time we were here, which is how important this is to Trinity. And it's great hearing the range of sort of interested parties around us. But it matters greatly to us because this is a significant part of the college's endowment. And of course, the success of Trinity, the success of Cambridge University, and the success of the city are all symbiotic. We're ready to invest significantly in the science park, and in doing that, we want to open the doors more broadly to people from further afield. There are perceptions of there being a gate at the front of the science park, which simply isn't there. We want to change that going forward. The extraordinary success of the science park has created huge economic growth. It's created jobs. It's created demand for homes. But we also recognise that a lot of that has been focused in and, really directly around academic success and scientific success. And we acknowledge that, and as part of this wider application, we want to go further. So we're really proud of things that we've achieved in the science park, like working with the Cambridge Science Centre. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for us. We want to keep pushing further forward. So I'm going to stop and pass on to Eric, but just to say thank you to the whole team and to everybody here.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Chair. I have about 40 slides to show, and I'll try to go through them as quick as possible. Not all the content is completely new. If you remember, members of the council, we did an initial briefing back in November, which we set out the ambitions and the vision that Jamie outlined and what the intentions in terms of the master plan were. So some of that content would be familiar to you already, hopefully, and then what we are today going to go through is to show what we've done since, I suppose, but also to explain the mechanics of how the planning submission is going to look like, the type of documents we're putting together, and the type of content you would expect to see. So in doing that, hopefully you'll see that how the initial vision is taking shape as a coherent set of information that you'll get to see eventually. Just a reminder of what the vision was and what Jamie was talking about, that we pretty much see this as an opportunity for transformation, to create a neighborhood of the city at the north and bring the park in more actively participating in the city. We have seen this site not in isolation, and that's very important. So in looking at the site as a neighborhood, then we need to think about it as a part of the city. So this thinking at wider scale has been shaping our vision and thinking all the way through. And so obviously in the emerging local plan and the recent the process of consultation, we've made sure that this site is looked at as an important piece of the transformation of the city to the north. It is an important part of it, as we see here in terms of geographically, so it covers a large area. So therefore, it has a very important role to play. As we know, this wasn't designed really as a neighborhood, as part of the city. This was designed originally pretty much as a standalone science park, as it were, the first of its kind in Europe and certainly in the UK. So a lot of the work that we've been doing is rethinking and trying to see how this place could be opened and physically opened, as well as then upgrading it in different ways to make sure it's a place that is of the high standards. We've been looking at things such as connectivity, local connectivity, as well as wider connectivity and internal connectivity. That's a very important thing. And it's not just about cars going in and out, it's about how people move and different modes of transportation. The place is changing, as we know, around the station. There's already a planning consent for new housing development and mixed use, and is, again, what the role that the science park could play in this is very important. We talked last time about the aspiration and how we go from one condition, which is pretty much of a network that is not connected, that the green spaces that are there and are great, but they could be better, and an urban grain that is dispersed, and how do we transform that into a better connected place, what we call a green chassis, which is this kind of new network of green spaces that then would enable this improved connectivity and a new urban grain. We talked about last time about the constituent parts of the park today, and we can see that nearly 30% of the park is about cars, is about car infrastructure. So we set out to see how we can change that and transform that and see that as an opportunity to create this new place and give a different emphasis whilst maintaining 50% of the open space which exists at the moment and improving densification. And this is where we are at the moment, and this is where the proposal sits. And we can see that that has changed the emphasis of the park now through the proposals that we can put forward, where the car infrastructure has shifted into other places. It has been consolidated, it has been transformed, and now a lot of that area went to improve connectivity, but also to densification and improving the open spaces. You'll see that we haven't lose any open space. So even though we have densified, or the proposals are to densify the place, the open space remains the same, but the big difference is that is and will be of better quality. A reminder of the three core principles that we're basing the proposals on, which is opening the park to the city, creating an enhanced landscape, and with the existing park as a centerpiece, and considerate intensification for science lab and other uses as well. We have these three core principles then generate 6 spatial strategies. So the first, the opening the park to the city, then is how we create the place into a more permeable and connected place. An enhanced landscape at the centerpiece is how we take the park and spread it out into other areas of the park that at the moment are not necessarily even green, but that we create a network of green and blue infrastructure. And then through doing that we create activity and a more defined place. We've been doing a lot of thinking of how to start and creating what we call a good start. So nothing really needs to be built in order to in terms of buildings, in order for this transformation to start, and this transformation could start very soon, and Trinity is committed to doing that as Jamie has explained. So we've been looking at how to make for instance, the southern edge more permeable, better connected to the busway by creating these welcome mats that we're sort of calling them, that are better enhanced, improved crossings in certain areas, but also looking at how the internal connectivity of the park and enhancement of existing park could happen. This will take shape of, in various ways. We'll have a series of parameter plans and design codes, which we'll talk about, but also there's an art strategy, for instance, and an early win strategy where we could start to transform the landscape and legibility of the park through wayfinding, etc. So a lot of these are, as it were, low-hanging fruits and early wins that we'll look at. We've been doing a lot of comparative studies with other places in Cambridge that have perhaps similar uses to the ones that we would like to introduce in the park more actively. This is just an example of, we call it a lawn, which is going to be an active green space at the heart of the park, and how it could be used. And we've been thinking about it in relation to other similar places, such as the Botanic Gardens. And this sets up a robust strategy for going forward. So this is obviously going to have to be a phased development. Is complex. It will need to be deployed carefully, but with infrastructure and green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, and connectivity infrastructure at its core all the way through. So we would outline a series of scenarios of how this could happen, but essentially the planning application would have flexibility to enable this to happen in different ways. And there will be these kind of materials where we will be showing, for instance, early transformation in relation to the future of the park. So it's always not, keeping that vision in mind and how an early transformation could then continue all the way to the end scenario. The planning application structure in itself is relatively simple, as you can see on the screen. There's three main components to it in terms of control documents. There's going to be a series of parameter plans, development specification, and design code, and then there'll be a series of supporting documents that would kind of paint a wider picture and go into a bit more detail into how those three components work. Development specifications is essentially the what, how much, etc., and the design code and parameter plans is the how that's going to happen. We have included a series of examples of how the parameter plans are looking. So we have the parameter plans are very important. So it's a suite of plans that outline how the vision takes shape very specifically. So for instance, the green and blue infrastructure is one of those plans, and it's going to be a key one. And as you can see, there's no buildings here. This is about the open space and the green and blue infrastructure that structure it. For instance, the dark green is all the areas that are going to be retained in terms of landscape features, and this is based on an approach of retention, enhancement, and expansion. So that's going to be very important, that the starting point is making the most out of what's there, and then we deploy our green chassis through that. And then there's a series of other plans that are related to that open plan, open space provision, such as access and movement, where will be a hierarchy of connectivity that's going to be explained through various modes of transportation, speeds, etc. But if you notice here, all that is very interrelated in terms of the open spaces. There's a parameter plan layout, which is essentially about the boundaries. The boundaries are very important, not only the boundaries internally of the park, but externally. So the edges and how those edges relate to the context. A series of development zones, which is essentially the puzzle that then forms the whole park and how geographically is divided. The land uses, which will be described very clearly in terms of where they go and how they interrelate to each other. And finally, a framework plan that shows all the different pieces in relation to each other and how they correlate. They're complex plans, but then they'll be supported by a series of design codes. We have outlined three main conditions in the park in order to develop all the parameter plans and the design code. One is park side, the other one is street side, and finally the edges of the park. And we have based a lot of these in developments that have planning consent, including 440, which you just saw, and get that knowledge out of it and then create a series of approaches and strategies that then would set out the more specific sets of documents. So, for instance, the park, we will describe in some detail how the park will get transformed into a place that works better, that is better connected, that works better in terms of BMG, blue infrastructure, etc. And then we'll have a series of drawings such as this, which in support to the plans and in section will describe the place in 3 dimensions. So these 2 sets of information will then start to paint a better picture and create a very specific set of guidelines. So anyone developing the park in the future can follow this through, and any reserve matters applications that come in the future could follow a very clear set of codes. These are examples of the type of pages that design codes will follow. In this case, for the open space and the park, where we describe specifically what type of character, as well as the type of planting, etc., that could go into. And similarly, we'll do this with the street. So transformation is going to be from the loop road into a street, something that is more legible, that is better connected, is easier to use for different modes of transportation, including cycling and pedestrian, but also it has BNG embedded into it, SODs and all these things, and where buildings participate more actively into it. And we have defined a series of street characters that then inform how that space then gets contained by buildings, as it were. So first we define the open space strategy of the street, and then how buildings relate to it. And then we'll have a similar set of information that then will set up more specifically the characters of the street in different areas and in response to specific conditions. And as you can see, these go into some detail in terms of describing how the proposed or the existing then gets transformed into proposed, and the sort of parameters that we'll have to follow. And similarly, the edge condition, the edge is very important, and we have long conversations with the planning team about how to treat the edges, but because it's not only about the relationship of the park with its adjacent neighbors and how to then create a more permeable park, but it's also what is the impact on long and medium range views, etc. So there's a impact assessment in terms of views that we're undertaking where edges are very important. And similarly, we'll describe how those edges need to be treated, the opportunities for transformation, etc. So I'm just whizzing through these pages because you'll have hopefully the opportunity to have seen them in the pack that we submitted and get a sense of the kind of wording that we're saying, the musts and the shoulds. So, what must be followed, but there's still flexibility within that to allow for creativity, for the developments that come forward to then do interesting proposals for that. And the final section will go into a bit more detail in terms of some of the development zones, into 4 development zones, which we envisage that are likely to come forward earlier. And as you can see, the information contained in these drawings go a bit more into a bit more detail in terms of defining things, how the open space relates to the connectivity, relates to things like frontages, hierarchy, and all these things, and ensuring that we have enough information embedded into these documents that everyone that is trying to follow them and will follow them as guidelines is as clear as possible to how to respond to them. So you'll see that we've included 3-dimensional information that follows from the plans in order to then set a kind of strategy that starts from the green and blue infrastructure, i.e. the plane, as it were, of the site, but then goes into maximum heights, things like frontages, facades, landmark buildings, etc., and all the way into massing and roof articulation and things like that to create an interesting place. So we're not designing buildings here, but we need to make sure that there's enough information here for whoever comes in and develops a site and designs a building here has enough information and clear information that the developments are of high quality. They're considering connectivity, BNG, green, blue infrastructure, and all these things that are important for the park. So we'll also have illustrative materials such as the information and the images that you see on the screen, including an illustrative plan that outlines what the aspiration could be or is of the park when it's completed. So this is not just kind of setting up a scenario for the first years, but actually if there's enough information there that if following the codes and the parameter plans, etc., this vision could be followed all the way through to a complete park at some point in the future. So that is the last slide, and I didn't want to go into too much detail about the information because I'm sure members of council will have questions to ask, but also that hopefully with the information submitted in advance that you've had the opportunity to read through. Obviously, this is just a snippet of the information that we produce, and obviously you'll get a series of more comprehensive set of documentation that will explain how all this works together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I open to questions, I just wonder whether you would like to highlight any particular changes in emphasis or theme since you last presented to us in November. Is there anything that we should particularly draw attention to which has moved on?
Yes, the short answer is yes. More than changes, we've through the feedback that we received and the questions we received back in November, but also through the process we've had with the planning team and the officers, we've been informing the proposals all the way through. We've had, I forgot the number of pre-app workshops and sessions, more than 10 so far, where we have been shaping, what you see on the documents have been shaped actively through these conversations with the planning team. So for us, it has been a very positive process and really interactive. So what you see there in the information, it hasn't been generated in a vacuum, but actually it has been very collaborative. So what I would say is that there's a lot of knowledge and information has been developed from that starting point of the vision that is becoming hopefully much more specific and clear. A lot of the conversations have been about clarity of information and clarity of how did we describe things, and that there's no ambiguity about things, with a balance of trying to have enough flexibility to not hinder creativity and good architecture and good developments coming forward. So we're not here to impose a draconian kind of set of rules, but actually something that could be followed to ensure of the highest quality, basically.
Thank you for that presentation. Now, members, I'm sure there will be a number of questions. I'm going to note down the names. I have Councillor Thornborough, Councillor Smart, Councillor Bradnam, and Councillor Hawkins. Bear with me. And members, we have 25 minutes for our questions. Can I just remind members of what I said earlier about not to express any opinions on the proposals and to confine ourselves, if we can, to questions. That is a transition that we usually find quite easy to present. So I'm going to start with Councillor Thornborough, please.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. It's very interesting. I'm really pleased to see how this is so much landscape-led master planning. That's really great to see, and I'm really pleased to see that there's a lot of talk about how we move about using the transport hierarchy, about walking, cycling, and public transport, and then private cars. There's a few things. I know that the colleges are, since the pandemic, seem to be really taking on the views of their students in a way that's really affecting the brief and the way designs for their college community spaces have come through, which is great to see. I wonder if you have had a chance to talk to the younger people who work at the science park or near the science park to understand what their needs are and whether there's been a change since the pandemic. So I know there is a real desire to be able to enjoy outdoor spaces, and I know that things like, is it possible to consider a kind of 5K run track so that we can do park runs? And is it possible to, I know in Cambridge, the Camscape are a really great local group and trying to ask for, skate-friendly routes. I also know that in West Cambridge, when the hub was built there, it meant that the people from the individual buildings could meet in a central space which was free to access, but also people from beyond the that development came in because it was just a great place to be. So when I've had some time, I've gone there and checked emails before a meeting. So that sort of thing really does link with existing communities, because I think the aspiration for that, it would be great to see that truly successful. And again, you have Cambridge Regional College nearby, and they do a lot of training in construction. Is there a way, if this is developed through, that the people training at the regional college could get some experience or site visits or some kind of liaison to, we know we need to support our young people into the construction industry and the trades and the crafts, and this seems like an amazing opportunity.
Councillor Thornborough, that's quite a number of questions to be starting
More
off. Shall
points
we
rather
address
than
those
questions.
first?
So one thing was about I was going to bring up safety, design for safety, particularly women, but have you engaged with young people and young parents who might be working there?
Yes, so we've undertaken a series of consultation events that were open to both employees on the Science Park, and it was fantastic. On the evenings, we did get some of the kind of younger members of the Science Park community coming along and talking to us about, the desirability of being able to go and play frisbee at lunchtime and having a space for that type of activity, and the other types of things that they enjoy in the park and things that they'd like to see more of. We also had members of the wider community come along to those events as well. And, that included, for example, local childminders in the area that saw this as a real opportunity to bring children during the day and have more things for them to do if they come and access the park. We have been engaging with the regional college, and obviously one of the key things that we see this as an opportunity to do is to improve the accessibility from the railway station all the way across to the regional college, which, obviously on winter evenings for kind of all members of the college community, it's not the most desirable route to walk or cycle at the moment, so there's some real improvements that can be done there. And I think just in terms of the skills side of things, obviously as part of this application, there will be a commitment towards employment and skills as part of the broader master plan as well. So those are all things that we're considering.
Jamie.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, one of the things that we're blessed with at the Science Park is a group of really engaged owner-occupiers and long lease investors. And what we've done, we've got a series of things that we're calling no regret actions, which are things we're pushing forward with regardless of the outcome of this application, because we know that we need to improve at the park today. And, these range from better sports facilities. We're considering, and these at the moment are very early stage, so please take this in the right way, but we're working through feasibility studies to look at sports facilities, paddle courts, a whole host of different things that we could bring onto the park, which would be open not just to people on the park, but further afield. But we're also looking at whether we could create an education outreach programme, working with the Cambridge Science Centre, with all of the people bringing forward developments on the park. So there are a huge number of opportunities. And when we talk about park run, there used to be park runs on the Science Park, and so we're thinking, well, can we get the lakes swimmable? Can we get a mini Science Park triathlon running every weekend? There's a whole host of ideas, and we're really excited about that.
Thank you. Members, we have I think six other members wanting to ask questions. I wouldn't mind asking one or two myself. So if we could keep our questions relatively concise, I'm sure that would help our developer guests to keep their answers equally concise. Can I call on Councillor Smart, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've got one question. I'll lead up to it. So firstly, thank you for the presentation. Again, you're showing us pictures of a book. It's a bit of a shame. You ended on a comment, clarity and clear, so absolutely not. My first thought was, where are the buildings? You know, in this committee, we deal with buildings. You later said that the buildings were for everyone else, I presume, but everyone isn't in the room today. You talked about a long-term vision. That's nice. The thing I would like is a master plan. I didn't hear that mentioned at all. So is there a master plan? If not, what have we got? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I believe one of the first words that I said was master plan, but yeah, it is a master plan. So what we're doing is, it is a master plan. And if there was ambiguity in that, I apologize, but it is a master plan what we're doing. The spaces in between the buildings in cities are some of the most important aspects. If those spaces in between are not carefully considered, are not well designed, then wonderful buildings can come in and they could fail because there's no one around them, no one can get to them. So what we're trying to do here, hopefully, is to set up a set of very clear parameters and guidelines to enable great buildings to be built in the park. And that's what a master plan should do. So it should be clear, but it should be flexible enough to enable that to happen. So that is the key objective of the work that we've been doing over the last year and a half or so.
Councillor Porra.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I obviously welcome the active travel, the early green infrastructure and the setbacks, because I think particularly if you're looking at people feeling comfortable in the site, not having buildings too close in is always welcome. I want to just ask, I won't mention safety at night because Councillor Thorne has done that. Temporary market in the cinema sounds like a positive move. I think that does always need power and water and obviously someone to kind of keep it going, otherwise you tend to end up with a sort of a lonely van sitting there once a week, because I'd hope that that would be something as part of your kind of community engagement you'd look at. I wanted to just mention sustainable urban drainage, obviously particularly with the situation in Cambridge with foul water at the moment. I'd hope when it comes back, we might be able to talk a little bit more about how you're going to make the maximum use of the water resources you've got on site. And obviously with the build out being in phases, I think it'd be great to have the green infrastructure in early, but I suppose it'd be good to have some reassurance that the later phases aren't going to involve large lorries driving over the lovely green infrastructure you already put in. And finally, this is almost, I know it's not a residential development, but I wonder if you've thought about having a kind of community officer role who could pull all these kind of things together, a bit like we had, for example, in Trumpington. You have community officers development officers who actually go in for a year or two and start up the things you want to continue. And I know it's slightly different because it's not residential, but I heard your sort of commitment to the community, and I think that might be something to explore. Thank you.
On the community officer point, one of the things we're always challenging ourselves on is that this science, but this is the physical plan for the science park. There's a whole operational piece alongside this. We've got a fantastic team on the ground at the science park. Jane Hutchins, who I'm sure many of you have met and know, and we're adding to that team at the moment. We're building that out at the moment. So we brought a new senior director in that absolutely will. There's a necessity for a role like that, and that will be part of it. But as we go through the process, we need to add to it. So that's, I think, that's a helpful comment.
Did you want to address the questions in relation to drainage and foul water and what engagement you've had on those issues?
So yes, I mean, that is very, very important in terms of the green and blue infrastructure strategy that we put together. We look back at the history of the site in terms of how it worked, because a lot of the original drainage network has been covered essentially, and that site used to work in a certain way, and what the green and blue infrastructure plan is working towards is almost recapturing that original intent of how the site originally worked. So, so first drainage is still there, and the ponds, for instance, the existing ponds in the park, are following the drainage lines that existed when these were all agricultural fields. So we tried to rediscover this kind of blue infrastructure and work with it. This topography on the site, even though it looks like it's a flat site, but it's not. There's a level that goes towards, from the northwest to the southeast, and water is trying to get to the river, obviously. So all that, the open space strategy works precisely doing a SOTS network that is working with the topography and the levels, and try to rediscover some of this kind of lost drainage network. And that in turn then feeds things like pockets of biodiversity, because some of this is conveyance, but some of the other things are about storm exceedance zones and things like that, where there's a lot of water that falls in, so you need to manage it gradually. But all these aspects are opportunities to increase biodiversity, to create corridors, etc. So really, a lot of the work we've done is about how almost rediscovering the lost pattern of fields that used to be here and work with it. And that it happens to be the best place where people move as well, so it's all interrelated.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. You'll appreciate, as being one of the councillors from Milton and Waterbeach Ward, this is close to my heart and I'm very familiar with it. So 4 main questions and a couple of comments. So firstly, thank you very much for bringing forward a master plan. I would have been pleased to see early planning for things like additional power centres, because you're going to need power. My colleague, Councillor Porra, mentioned water and SUDS, and absolutely the drainage here impacts very specifically Milton. So we need to be working together to make sure that the drainage here on this site, which then goes through the 13th public drain to Milton, actually doesn't impact us negatively. So that's master planning. Secondly, it was almost the first thing I was sort of clocked onto was connectivity. And so I'm very keen that you should be, at maximising active travel routes. So bus and use of access. You need to be thinking about connectivity to bus routes, train stations, but also places where, for example, we've still only got a trial of Voi scooters, but they are a very common method of transport to get from the Science Park and indeed from Milton to Cambridge North Station. But the most worrying thing is cars and car parking. And I know you have a car parking budget on the site, but what I would like you to be aware of, so in your narrative, you said the parking has reduced, it has shifted to other places. And I just want you to be aware that unless you do make a very concerted effort to sort out your car parking properly for the amount of people who need to park on the site, they will displace their parking to roads nearby, including Milton. And I already have a really serious and dangerous problem in Milton because cars from a construction site just to the south of the Jane Coston Bridge are parking in Milton dangerously. They're taking no regard to the residential premises, the residential area and quiet roads, and they're making it very difficult for emergency vehicles to get through. So I would like to see a really serious approach to car parking and where you're going to park the cars and what provision you're going to make if you say that you may not bring your car on site. Can we have a car parking plan? Moving on, delighted to see an art strategy, and I was fortunate to visit the Cambridge Science Centre yesterday at the Trinity Centre with the MP Charlotte Kane. That was delightful. And I'm very glad to hear that you're making provision for a new building for them, somewhere close to your lawn, I think, so right at the beginning of the site. So I'm very pleased with that, and I think that will encourage children. What I also wanted to check was, are you using the Greater Cambridge Planning Service Youth Engagement Service to engage about, yes you are, good, nods, excellent. It's an excellent service and it provides excellent engagement with youngsters to get their views about the shape of the buildings and places around them.
Councillor Bradnam, I think that's
Finally,
five
finally,
questions
just one.
so far. Do you have another
Finally,
question?
just one. Proximity, what are you doing about your proximity to dwellings on Kings Hedges Road and Lovell Road? Because the edges there are particularly sensitive to I'm glad you're nodding, but I would like to know what's being done there. So, thank you.
So I just want to clarify on the car parking that we're consolidating within the park, so we're not shifting it outside elsewhere. We're consolidating and centralizing the car park within the park. So it will, the strategy, there is a strategy first of all, and Stuart, maybe you can talk in more detail about it, but we didn't mean to say that it's going to be shifted elsewhere outside the park, but it's within the park as a strategy of consolidation. So at the moment it's spread all over the park. So the idea is to, the strategy is over a few years to centralize it in multi-story car parks, etc., that are kind of well considered, could become travel hubs, etc. So that is what I meant. In terms of the edge, to the southern edge to King's Hedges, we've set a very clear strategy of heights, of maximum heights that then work throughout the park. So it considers all edges, so the northern edge as well as the southern edge, and the east as west, because they're different conditions. So we have the A14, we have Milton Road, we have the Busway and King's Hedges, and then we have the regional college. So each edge is slightly different. And so we set all the parameters in terms of green buffers. Green buffers are going to be very important. Landscape and then heights all work together in order then to consider those edges very carefully and ensure that in that particular edge there's no overdevelopment. There's a good setback. We have about 15 to 20 meters setback there, and no more than X number of stories, etc. So each area of the park will be considered, or has been considered very carefully in terms of the impact of development on neighboring sites. So those are the questions that I wanted to address. Perhaps, Stuart, do you want to talk about strategy in more detail?
So obviously, as you'd expect, there's lots of active travel and public transport measures that form across the whole strategy, but specific to your point on car parking, we are working within trip budgets that are agreed with the council, as you'd expect, and within that there's also a range of expected car drivers. So we're obviously not wanting to encourage car driving, but equally not go so low that it's not reasonable. So we're working within those parameters, essentially. In order to manage those car parking spaces that are there, there's an existing 106 already on the park that caps the numbers. And so we're looking to supplement that with an updated and enhanced parking management plan. That's already been prepared. We're continuing to develop that. So that'll be site-wide as well, and will feed into what Eric said around this consolidation piece, better managing it, and equally making sure that off-site effects as well are properly considered.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not proposing to ask members to come back with supplementary questions because we have 5 minutes left, and I have Councillors Hawkins, Stobart and Griffin wanting to ask questions. So if I could ask those three to keep their questions fairly concise and focused, that would be very helpful. Councillor Hawkins.
I will be very precise. Most, if not all, of my points have actually been raised by previous speakers. I think what I would have liked to have had a bit more time to hear is that you had a slide with the zones. You had 4 zones, or zone 1, 2, 3, 4, with various things. It would have been better to have more time to talk through that, to see how, what the heights were, what your distance, you're talking about distances and edging and things like that. But other than that, no, thank you. It's good to hear the improvements that have happened. especially permeability. Young people, you took my...
Right.
It's good to have another champion of young people.
Just on the youth engagement, so we have taken the opportunity to work with Bonnie's team and have actually embarked on what I think is the largest youth engagement programme so far for the Greater Cambridge area. So we've been working not just with primary school, but also with secondary schools, the North Cambridge Academy, and we've had a series of workshops over the last 4 or 5 months, and they're culminating over the next few months where we're inviting the children back to the site. They've been involved in biodiversity trails across the site, obviously targeted at the various age groups, and also been able to engage with the Cambridge Science Centre as well. So we've seen that as a really positive way to, again, just encourage people onto the science park so that they feel that it's there for them.
Did you want to add anything on the zoning that Councillor Toomey Hawkins referred to? Briefly, if you would.
Yes, sorry, we had to kind of go through a lot of information very quickly, but yeah, so the park is, so the parameter plans, one of the parameter plans is the development zone plan. So essentially that divides the whole park in geographical zones, very specific geographical zones that are working with existing conditions, existing leaseholds. So this is, if you imagine that an X-ray of this is a very complex puzzle of different leaseholders, etc. So we took into consideration that as well as physical conditions, obviously the park, the existing loop road, and the edges of the park form a very clear boundary. But then we divided the park, and the reason for doing that is that then we could then look at each individual zone in more detail. So and we could then code and establish parameters very specifically for each boundary of each of these zones. So and what we try to do is achieve a balance between not doing it plot by plot, because that would be too granular, there would be too much information, and also not too widespread, that then it becomes generic. So we arrived to this map, take into consideration that balance between specificity and being able to have flexibility within that for development to come in slightly different ways.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stobart.
Chair, thank you. So I've got 4 things, but I'm going to make it 1 question and 3 points. So the question, how much of the design work, or how has the design work been influenced by, you might call, expected patterns of working in the science park? So just to give an example, or to explain the point a little more, the science park will be a place where super secret things are done. You know, that's essentially, you pay a company to develop something that is, you know, confidential until its moment of release. So, you know, secrecy, keeping things under wraps is vitally important, but we do want the engineers to mix and to do things that are mutually beneficial. And so there's that curious thing that, you know, in a university campus, people would mix, and we encourage them to bump into each other, and we create spaces. But on the other hand, we do want this possibility to be super secret, you know, when it needs to be. So there's a lot of social science around this, and design techniques and campuses that work and don't. So just you know, some explanation as to what you've taken into account in the design. And
Councillor Stobart, that's a very clear question. I know you had some points to raise as well, but I think we're trying to focus on questions and clarification. And also, I'd very much like to give Councillor Griffin a chance to... Okay. Thank you very much. That's understanding. Right. Any response to that? I mean, it's sort of self-explanatory, but if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yes, so we, I mean, there's various things that we did. First of all, that we learned from what's there already. So we have the element, as Jamie had explained in the beginning, that we have engagement with a lot of existing leaseholders, and the campuses or the science park is already operating in a way like that there's places where research is taking place, which is very secretive and all that, but at the same time, people are here. So people need to conduct that research, and people need spaces for leisure, for interaction, for all sorts of things. So in a way, what we observed is how kind of people move where they go at the moment. For instance, the Bradfield Center has been transformative. It has kind of established a place, a common infrastructure in a way, a common social infrastructure where people gather. There's a cafe, there's a place where to have lunch and all that. Some of the existing buildings have that, but not all of them. So we were able to observe that in the park. That's one thing. The other thing is that we've observed, because we are working in other places like this and in innovation campuses that are undergoing the same transformation. So we were able to look at what's happening elsewhere in the same way. So for instance, we're working on Cambridge Biomedical Campus, etc. So we're able to extrapolate information and see what, and even with the university and colleges, we do a lot of master plans with colleges and universities. So we're able to extrapolate that in terms of people dynamics and behavior. And then finally, there were visits to other places that were done in innovation campuses elsewhere in the world, where we took examples that are, and how these places are creating these places of collision space that Jonathan Brooks always talks about, these collision spaces that are still able to happen, even within buildings, but obviously in campuses, even whilst next door, there's a very protective, secretive facility where research is happening. So it is possible to do. And in fact, it needs to happen. And they're not exclusive. They could happen continuously.
Thank you. We are, members, out of time. However, if our developer guests would allow it, I have two more questions we'd like to put to you. And then, Jamie, if you'd like to just sum up, that would be very helpful. So, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chair. And this question is for the representative from Trinity College. So I think we all applaud the ambition of opening this park to the wider community. But I have some concerns about that. In particular, well, just as an example, recently my wife and I went to the Science Center there with our granddaughter. It cost us 30 quid. Of course, we could have saved money by getting yearly membership for 95 quid together. And remembering that this park is next to one of the most deprived neighborhoods in Cambridge, what's going on here? And what is Trinity, the wealthiest college in Cambridge, doing to make sure this is accessible by the wider community?
Right. That is specific to yourself. It is a question about the future rather than about the planning application, but if you would like to comment on it, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. It's something we're thinking about long and hard. And when I talk about the wider amenities in the park, the big question is, how are these going to be operated? There are financial implications there are operational matters, but actually we need to understand how do we make these truly accessible, not just accessible in the sense that they are 200 yards from somebody's doorstep, but financially accessible to people. I won't speak on behalf of the Cambridge Science Centre being a separate organisation in terms of their ticket prices and so on, but I do know that they've worked very closely with the local schools to make sure that schools in the less fortunate areas around the science park have had access into the Science Centre, not at ticket, not being charged and come in food and so on. As I said earlier on, we're at the tip of the iceberg. This absolutely is a challenge. I can't answer your question fully today, and that's why we're on this journey. But absolutely take on board your comments there, and it's something that matters a lot to us.
Thank you for that. And I think the last question is for my Vice Chair, Councillor Simon Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. My question is more about deliverability. So this is in a location of extreme infrastructure pressures. and infrastructure deficits. And we've talked about the water, but I just wanted to draw attention to 2 points, which is around transport. You didn't mention the scope of the intensification that you're planning, so the space and the job numbers don't need to answer that. This is for next time. Also, the forecast energy requirement and how you're going to deal with that and the pressure for data centres. On-site generation, local energy management, and the ultimate carbon footprint consequences of all of this, and also the time frame over which you are proposing to deliver this scheme. I know you only work in very short-term phases at Trinity, and so since 1975, whenever it was, it's hardly a blink, is it, in your time frames? But it would be interesting to know how many decades you're proposing to do this. Or is it going to be like slow industrial state, we just keep developing and redeveloping continuously? Thank you.
I might answer the sort of the high-level Trinity piece on this in terms of our time horizon, and it's being developed since 1975, and indeed we've owned this land for 450 years. I think if you fast forward 450 years and we still own this land, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Our absolute intention is to own the freehold of this site going forward. Now, Trinity, despite its fortunate position and endowment, won't be able to deliver all of this by itself, and as people can see, there's great benefit from having long leaseholders alongside us, working with us, bringing expertise, people's capital. And really, this is why we want the master plan to be able to say we can steward this site. We can't do this, it would be naive of us to think we can do it alone, but we need a lot of help and support along the way, but this master plan is what sets the shape for that. So in terms of longevity, we are planning to be here for centuries.
Right. Well, I said you've had a lot of questions, very diverse questions. One or two might have been hidden suggestions, possibly. Did you want to respond to the overall tone of questioning before we end this session?
I mean, unless any of my colleagues have got further comments to add, just to say thank you. And it's a really exciting time for us, and it's been a really exciting process. And genuinely, we feel stronger for the process we've been through, the JDMCs, the QRPs, all of the PPAs. So we really appreciate people's time and support.
Right. Well, it just remains to me to thank you and your whole team very much for that clear presentation and for all the effort you've put into engagement with the planning service. And I know that will continue. So thank you very much for your time. We'll just take a short break, members, to set up for our next presentation. Welcome back to this meeting of the Joint Development Management Committee on 25th of February. Agenda item 5 and 6. So the next two items on the agenda, further pre-application developer briefings, relating to sites adjacent to Cambridge North Station, known as residential blocks at S11, S21, and Wild Park, and then land north of Cowley Road adjacent to Wild Park. Now, given the relationship of these sites to one another, and they're coming forward under a planning decision made by the Secretary of State, I'm going to ask the Principal Planning Officer, Chama Ahmed, to provide a short overview of the context and the planning history of the site before asking the first developer presentation on this. So, Chama.
Thank you, Chair. So, the full extent of the area relating to land north of Cambridge North Station is shown here. The site is circa 10 hectares in total area, and it's located at the northeast edge of Cambridge. The site sits wholly within the boundary, the administrative boundary of South Cambs District Council. The site is bound to the north by Chesterton Siding Site, to the east by the railway line, and to the south by the recently constructed, or completed rather, 1 Cambridge Square, as well as 2 Cambridge Square, which is now Novotel, and also Cambridge Business Park and the guided busway, which lies to the west and northwest. This slide shows an illustrative scheme simply of the composition of the proposed development scheme as approved under the hybrid planning application. So the approved planning application scheme was submitted by Brookgate Land Limited, who remains the key investor responsible for delivering the redevelopment of the site. The hybrid planning scheme is a combination of proposal and both outline detail, where all matters were reserved except for access and landscaping, and also a full detail component too. The timeline below, as you see here, shows, gives you a brief snapshot of the key planning milestones in the determination of that application. So first stage was the period between 2020 and 2022, comprising the pre-app stages and the submission of the planning application, and then the period comprising from January 23 to 24, which comprise events such as the submission of the non-determination application, the JDMC resolution, and then subsequent inquiry that was held in June 23, and then that final phase where the decision, effectively the publication of the inspector's report in early 24, and then the subsequent Secretary of State decision issued in April 24. Just a quick summary over the details of the planning decision. So the balance generally, I mean, there's a lot of issues that were obviously looked at here, but I won't dwell on them too long. The planning balance, in the planning balance, great significant weight was given to the need for office, lab space, economic benefits of development, delivery of housing and affordable housing, and also environmental enhancements. The less than substantial harm to the Riverside, Stourbridge and Fen Ditton conservation areas were given great weight in that balance. It was, however, determined that the public benefits of the hybrid proposals were collectively sufficient to outbalance the identified less than substantial harm to the significance of those assets, those designated assets. So now focusing on the actual hybrid planning approval itself, so it's illustrating how those proposed schemes, items 5 and 6 on today's agenda, relate to the approved hybrid scheme and its respective components. So the approved hybrid scheme effectively included proposals for 425 residential units across 3 separate blocks, which are referred to as S11 to S21, 5 new commercial mixed-use buildings totaling approximately 65,000 square metres, that's gross internal area, a mobility hub building, and generally associated infrastructure, including a range of landscape and open spaces. So item 5 itself today will involve a reserved matters application that seeks to bring forward the 425 build-to-rent residential units, including affordable housing, as approved. The Wild Park in this section here, will also be included as part of that reserve matter submission and will ultimately be delivered in tandem with the residential. Item number 6, today's agenda, is in relation to the outline detail proposals for the purpose-built multi-storey commercial car park and its ancillary kiosk. The kiosk building is very small, so I've not actually annotated that here. This is actually located on what is an area reserved for a temporary logistics compound. Matters relating to scale, appearance and layout of both those aspects, that's the car park and the kiosk, are being reserved at this stage. The purpose of that multi-storey commercial car park is predicated on overcoming significant cost constraints relating to the construction of basements in each of these 5 commercial buildings, including the mobility hub. What it intends to do is total parking capacity of this will be circa 618 spaces, which in total represents a like-for-like re-provision, and therefore no net change. All basements that I've referred to previously will be removed under separate planning amendment applications in due course. And just to finish off the presentation, an indication of how how the parking provisions will change, and more so the focus on rail parking provisions. As just mentioned, the multi-storey commercial car park that's been proposed will mop up effectively all commercial car parking on the site, so there is no net change there. The rail parking will in fact be, or is currently being proposed to increase that by an additional 200 spaces. So in total, I mean, the nub of it effectively is that the impact of that increased parking provision on the general highway network is being currently discussed with the County Council Transport team. We're so certain that the applicant team today for item 6 will be able to feed back further on those conversations. That's the end.
Thank you, Chama. Just before you move away from that spot, so we're focusing, I hope, members, on the reserved matters today, and we'll be taking these 2 applications separately. Obviously, there is some apparent overlap between them, but I will try to confine the questioning to the relevant application in each case. Anything you want to say to us about the extent of the reserved matters, anything unusual about it in this case?
There isn't anything unusual necessarily to mention at this stage. I'm sure the applicants will present it quite clearly to members today and set that out in context of everything else that I've just speedily run through.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Chama. Very helpful background. Councillor Porrow, you wanted to make a
My
declaration?
apologies. I just want to make a declaration to note that my partner works in, I think, 1 Cambridge Square, which is not within the red line. I've had no discussion, but I've just realised I should put that on the record.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradnam. Did you have a declaration? Shall we come to that later? We'll have opportunity for clarification later, I think. Okay.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Khan. Sorry, what I just wanted to check was, are we also considering the, did I understand correctly? I'm not quite sure I understood that the parking which was originally due to be in the basement of the commercial buildings is now proposed to be in the area that was indicated orange on the plan. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Chama, you're welcome to answer that if you
Yes,
like, or we could leave it to the developers as part of their presentation.
Just a short answer, quick. Yes, that's correct. Your understanding is correct.
And will that also cover the residential parking for these 425 homes?
There is no residential parking agreed as part of the original hybrid scheme.
Thank you.
Right. Chama, thank you very much. And I know you want to move out of that spot. So I'm now going to invite the developers for the residential blocks, S11, S21, and the Wild Park to present for up to 20 minutes. And then there will be the opportunity for members of the committee, as usual, to ask questions of clarification for up to 25 minutes. So if I call on Richard Thomas of Blockwork, and if you would kindly introduce your team.
Actually, I'm just going to pass on to Mike our planner initially, just to set further to the scene, and then I'll introduce our team properly.
So what I agreed with Juma, I'd set the scene for 3 minutes, and then Richard, I'll hand over to Richard, will introduce the team, we'll have a break, and then we'll introduce the second presenting team, if that's okay, Chair. The logic of me presenting is I was the planning consultant for the outline scheme, and I'm also fortunate enough to be the planning consultant for both of these schemes to provide some continuities, so it's appropriate that perhaps I give an overview. But there are 2 separate presentations by Blockwork and Granger, and that is important that you note the 2, and Brookgate Land, and both of these are being brought forward on behalf of the landowner, Network Rail, who are here today as well. She'll introduce herself later. They're both born from the same outline planning permission and master plan, and both design teams have communicated and collaborated throughout the process to give you some comfort on placemaking. We've also been talking to the Crown and been actively involved in their schemes for the business park. The application's granted consent in 2024. We're kind of like at the other end of the telescope from the scheme you just saw this morning. This is about getting going on the site and developing the site rather than this master plan. So this is about delivery of the scheme that's got planning permission. That is very much our focus today. And Councillor Smart, it is about buildings this time. We are going to talk about buildings. The other thing about this scheme is Blockwork and Granger. This is a funded scheme. This isn't a scheme that is going to take 2 or 3 years. If we get going on this, this will be coming out of the ground next year. So once this reserve matters is approved, this will be the 425 units will be coming out of the ground in Q1 next year. The principle of 425 is established in the outline planning permission. The presentation, therefore, is focused on the reserve matters. Unusually, landscaping was included in the outline planning application. We wanted to do that as a commitment to quality throughout, and access and highways matters were. So today we cover layout, scale and appearance. The scheme is fully compliant with the approved parameter plans and will deliver the affordable elements in the scheme in its entirety. We're talking to Juma and Rachel in the housing team about how we do that in the final mix. That will be delivered through an affordable housing delivery plan. That is notwithstanding the significant headwinds in market conditions and some of the challenges by the Building Safety Act that Matthew will take you through that's influenced the scheme. The applicants, we've had a very productive PPA process, and I fully support Bridget's letter that it's a great planning department that's working effectively. So we're getting a great service from your officers. It's been collaborative. It's been really, bearing in mind the pace we're moving at, it's been fantastic. All sustainability, landscape and ecology commitments in the outline will be met in full, including quite a challenging 89 litres per person per day for the scheme. So we're kind of like setting a benchmark outside of the university. We will be the first commercial to ever doing that. And I think it was mentioned earlier, the major part of the landscape of the Wild Park isn't going to be left to the later phases. It will be delivered up front from day one as part of this process. Then I move on very briefly to the Brookgate Land, because it's just to give you the overall piece. There are 3 elements to this. There are 2 non-material amendments and the new multi-storey car park. 1 Milton Avenue will be the partner to Councillor Porro's 1 Cambridge Square, which a partner works with. The changes at Juma remove the basement from the approved building. Greg from Make will confirm the carbon saving for that, so there is a huge benefit in carbon savings for that. The car parking will be provided in the new multi-storey car park, and the cycle parking provided at grade in a purpose-built facility. We are going to talk about the multi-storey car park. It is part of the 3. You will be aware of the challenges. You know, this is a planning committee. It works in a commercial environment associated with building things at the moment. Basements are hugely expensive. The multi-storey car park performs a simple function. It's very similar to car parking on the science park. It provides car parking more efficient, centralised and affordable manner. Therefore, gives us a better chance of delivering the 600,000 square feet we've got here. It creates negligible additional trips and results in significant carbon savings. We will not do all of this up front because we want to encourage active travel. We're next to the station, so the parking will be carefully phased as the buildings come forward. Within the trip budget, we can talk about this. Provision has been made for increased Network Rail passengers. People will be aware the station has got very busy. Looking at the numbers last week, passenger numbers have gone from 800,000 in 2019 to 1.5 million in 2025. So the station is performing the function that it's meant to. needs a bit of car parking, and we're future-proofing that in the TRIP budgets. The final NMA you'll see is the tweaking of the landscape that's been generated by improvements to the highway and us putting the car park on what is currently allocated for the logistics. So that's my probably more than 3 minutes, Chair, apologies, but hopefully that sets the scene usefully for everyone. And then I'm going to hand over to Richard.
Just to be clear, you have 20 minutes for the whole presentation, so I'm not concerned about how you divide it between yourselves. So if you would like to introduce your next...
Yes, I'll be super quick then, just to sort of introduce the wider team so we can get into the more hopefully interesting elements of the presentation on design. The developer looking to deliver the scheme is a company called Blockwork. We've been around for about 14 years. Blockwork is Network Rail and now Platform 4's delivery vehicle. So it's run by Block, who I work for, and then also Network Rail / Platform 4, which Rachel, who's here as well. So we have delivered. We are about delivery of schemes. This team we've worked with on other schemes, and as a JV, we're looking to deliver about 5,000 homes. With this particular team, we're looking at delivering over 2,000 over the next 5 years, and this is the next scheme that we want to start. So there's a much larger team that's here today, but here today we've got Matthew presenting from the architects, Franklin Ellis, at the end there. We've also got Toby from our M&E design team to answer also questions on sustainability. Obviously Mike, and then critically John here is from Granger, who is the funder and will ultimately own and operate the scheme. Just move on to the next slide, please. Just to sort of reiterate, this is about delivery. One of the schemes that we, as a team, have delivered recently was in Nottingham. Exactly the same team looking to take this forward, and we've actually taken the planning team round the Nottingham building called the Barnum, just to give the team a feel for the quality of what we're looking to deliver in Cambridge. And I think everyone thought that was quite useful in terms of evolving the design together to where we are today. So I'll pass on to the team and let them present further. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick slide from me, just on the planning process. This is really just reiterating what's been mentioned before. It's been a very collaborative, very positive process for us. We've gone through a series of pre-apps from taking on the initial outline. The visit to the site, to our example site in Nottingham, was welcomed. I think that was a really good opportunity to demonstrate the building type that we're talking about, the build to rent that Granger are delivering. We've also gone through the process of the quality review panel and several workshops for the housing on the affordable side, but also on the sustainability. It's been an iterative process, but it's been a very good process. So it's really just a thank you to Juma and his team for aiding us to bring the scheme together. And I think together we've come up with a really good deliverable product. So I'm going to just hand over to John on the Granger front.
Hi, my name is John Wood, Granger PLC. So quick whistle-stop tour of the business. Established 1912, FTSE 250 and the largest listed landlord in the country. We operate in the region of 11,000 homes. We've got a further pipeline of another 4,500 homes coming through. Our mission, if you like, is to professionalise the private rental sector. And we're doing this in a number of ways. Firstly, we're providing high quality homes. Of that 11,000 homes, we've probably got about 25,000 people living in our schemes, in excess of 25,000. So we're delivering high quality homes. We've got a high retention rate. Numbers just out last night differ from the slide. We're actually at above 98.1%. That 0.1% means a lot to the execs. And we've got a high retention rate as well within that. Average tenancy length has nudged up as well. That's gone to 32 months. So obviously in what we're providing, we're getting something right. We've got a whole staffing model. So everyone you see working in our schemes are Granger staff. We don't outsource anything to managing agents. We do our own lettings and everything. And then we're bringing in IT. That's the third way that we're trying to professionalise the system. We're using tech. So we're using tech in a number of areas. It's straight from the application process. You can do everything online. if you want to. Once you move in, we've got the app, so you can speak to people, you can book repairs, you can book bookable space, meeting rooms, dining rooms. You can even move out very easily. We're trying to do a full cradle to grave using technology, but there are instances where people are technophobes, if you like, so we've still got that full staff on site, so you've got a people person you can go and speak to.
Thank you, John. So just into the actual building and the process leading on from the outline submission. I've got a series of slides. I've also got a model which we can wander around live if the tech allows it. So I'll try and get time to accommodate that as well, because it's quite a useful explainer. Mike mentioned the outline submission and the parameters plan. So the parameters gave us a volume to work within on the previous approval. We sit wholly within that, and we also adhere completely to the character, the main driving factors that parameters plan set out. The 3 blocks. One of the very important things in terms of the scale of the development is the articulation that's inherent in the parameters, vertical articulation and also plan and section articulation. So it's a broken form. We're forming street edge, but we're forming them with a considered front. And we'll talk about uses as well coming forward. So as an illustration, top right is the maxed out, the approval, the parameters. Bottom right is where we sit within that. And you'll see we've actually dropped scale slightly in terms of the absolute heights. That's mainly as a result of, in the progression from outline to reserve matters, the Building Safety Act came into force. And obviously that set some key criteria in terms of usability and set height levels in terms of different classifications. So partly on the design front and partly on the delivery front, we've now adjusted actually to sit below that threshold, that 6-story threshold. We just poke out here with a little bit of plant, but no residential accommodation. So we sit underneath the high risk, what's termed as the high risk building threshold. We've also used that opportunity to rationalise the cores to increase deliverability. We've dropped from 19 cores to 9. But in that change, we're still holding on to all of the key characteristics that were built into that, the outline approval. So just going to drop back to Richard, I think, just to touch on the affordable element.
Yeah, so just to clarify really, so Grainger will also, Grainger have an RSL called the Grainger Trust, so they will also be managing the affordable homes. The scheme will be delivering the same number of affordable homes as per the outline, so I think it's 62 units, and the mix has been agreed through meetings with the housing officer and Kuma and the team. So, but I think it's quite useful just to point out that Grainger will be managing this element of the scheme as well, and it's all coming forward as one. So.
Thanks, Richard. Connectivity. Now, you know where the site is. It's an extremely well-connected site, extremely sustainable, obviously right next to the train station, but is also on immediately adjacent to the substantial bus route. So we're very connected, very sustainable, a perfect position really for John's build-to-rent offer, for the Grainger offer. I'm not going to dwell on that too long. So just to talk a little bit about the attitude to the design evolution that we took, taking the outline forward as guided by Juma, Jonathan and the planning team as well. So if we start here, top leftish, base volume. So the base parameters set the volumetrics, set the overall attitude towards how blocks were distributed and that articulated form. What we've done is, on top of that, applied a rigorous grid to allow for the fenestration to knit all of those individual parts together. So we get some rigor in that form, which is purposefully broken up to just scale. Moving on from that, we use material selection. This is largely a brick-built scheme with a local palette, but we use subtle variations in that palette to help reinforce the articulation, the vertical and the horizontal, how the section and the plan are broken into different planes to help handle the scale of the development. Then we reinforce that purposefully with the articulation of the fenestration type. So we have, you can see from the diagrams, sort of a series of cores which are expressed vertically, so we tend to emphasize the vertical on those elements. And then we have linking pieces. We want, which emphasize the horizontal. We want lots of legibility of where common cores are, where entrances are. So it's a legible building for the inhabitants, but also all those passing. It's going to be a well-trafficked area in terms of trips and such like. And also we are putting particular attention on areas that are kind of gateway, where we announce the scheme as we come towards the scheme from the north, and also where we open up towards our courtyard. So the diagram on the left, landscape. Landscape is extremely important in the scheme, and as Mike mentioned, it's actually all been designed and approved. We are tweaking around the edges about how we interact with the edges of the buildings, but there is an open landscape courtyard at the heart of the scheme, which is a massive resource for the residents, but also open to all. So there's a lot of workers and others using the area, which will benefit from that area. So taking on that articulation, the sustainability design in terms of the facade is challenging, but because of the structure that we've built up, the architectural structure that we've built up in terms of the grid and the patterning, we have the ability to have a kit of parts which allows flexibility by facade, by orientation, that allows us to do a tuning process. We also then layer on balcony use, different balcony types, different extensive glazing, and then the last bottom right is recompose. So with all of those things we find, we've got a lot of competing agendas there, a lot of things that push and pull, and we've been working that composition pace with our design team, with Juma's technical team on the sustainability side as well, and we've had very successful workshops on that regard. Okay, so just here we have a plan just to try and illustrate where different uses So on the left, ground floor plan, it's coloured up to show distribution of different uses. So we bounder onto Milton Avenue where we're maximising the commercial opportunity there. So we've got a range of commercial spaces as well as the entrances to the courtyard, but also entrances to the individual cores. So the kind of pink, the pink shading which you see on the right side of the plan, that's the commercial. The blue is the amenity spaces that are there for the residents, contained and offered by Grainger. John made the point that the offer from Grainger is very amenity heavy in terms of, and a very wide range of spaces, co-working spaces, reception, all of the sort of back of house support you now practically need in life for parcels and such like, but also a lot of community focused places. It's a place to meet, to gather. There's a program of events, there's TV rooms, cinema rooms, there's large kitchens, so you can actually have a dinner party, invite friends around a larger dedicated space. So very flexible. So they're the blue spaces. The cores are the greens, which are distributed, and I'll come on to how we kind of maximise use of cores in future slides. And then the reds, the couple of shades of the reds are actually the residents. So there is an amount of residential space at grade, at ground floor, with direct gardens and contained private space as well. So on the right, upper floor. So it's a stacking arrangement, but it breaks down as we go up the height of the building. So character. Talked a little bit about articulation. So it's a heavily articulated massing form, and then focus is applied in a few key areas. This is the block that introduces the scheme from the north.
Matthew, just to say that we are running out of time, so if you could draw things to a conclusion, please.
Okay. Right, okay. Yeah, sure. Quite a few. So I'll rattle along. Sorry, I thought Mike's time was separate.
We were told Mike 3 minutes to begin by the chair.
That's fine.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
Carry on.
Sorry, I will pick up the pace slightly. So frontage articulation. I talked about the applied grid, the grid of of the fenestration that we flex, so that's very strong and binds together. Materials, that material palette, changing, highlighting gateway, highlighting the cores and such like, and then character animation. We've got this ground floor edge which onto Milton Avenue, which provides a whole range of commercial spaces as well as the entrances to the individual apartments as well. And that goes together with the Wild Park off-site as well to provide the overall composition, which we've tuned and also satisfied the sustainability aspects. So I'm going to very quickly pass on to
I'll
Toby.
lean into your mic.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. So the key thing to say is we've had some really good sustainability workshops with the planners. We've modelled over 10% of the different flat types. They're very pleased with the proposals that we've put in place and all the steps that we've taken to date. And I'm happy to answer any questions on any detail later on.
Just a Sorry. On the kit of parts that I referred to in terms of the elevation, so we've got a lot of reveal detail in the fenestration patterning, which helps in terms of shadowing detail, but also helps in the environmental aspects, gives us high-level shading and such like. And then by orientation, we flex that kit of parts to allow adequate ventilation, high levels of daylighting. So we're still in a very final tuning pace, but we've got a 1% issue in a very small area of the site, which we're refining through. And we use those to tune and through the pre-app process, through the technical design, and through the liaison with the sustainability team, we've successfully tuned to a scheme that passes, that is to a very high standard in terms of daylighting, but also from Toby's point of view, that we contain overheating. So orientation and tuning has been a very important part of the process. Landscaping design, Mike said, it's approved. It's a great space. It provides a range of amenity spaces, and we're just adapting around the edges as necessary. And then just a couple of illustrations on the amenity spaces, the kind of quality of the amenity spaces, which are scattered in the light blues. The cores, the access for residents into the building are spread across the development. The purple arrows show those. We also have visibility through those cores so that there's sight line from street to courtyard to entice, to open that offer out. And also you see in the kind of purpley, light bluey colour, the bicycle storage. So we've got at-grade bicycle storage distributed, policy compliant across the scheme. All the residents is inboard, distributed by core, as is the refuge structure. Yeah, we'll leave it. That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you, for that presentation. Richard, was there anything you wanted to add to wind it up before we open it to questions?
Thank you. Yeah, just to wind up really. So 12 months of design work's got into today. The process has been very iterative with the planning team over that period, and we're ready to go. We're ready. We've got funder. We've been talking to contractors. We want to get on with delivery. Subject to getting the reserve matters approved, we will be looking to start later this year, early next year with construction. So thanks for listening, and please let us know any questions. Thank you.
So I'm now going to open it to questions. Before I do so, I am going to remind members that it would be helpful if you could confine yourself to questions and clarifications, and remember, of course, that we're focused on the reserve matters and the likely amendments that may come forward. So I have Councillor Khan, Councillor Bradnam, Councillor Smart, Councillor Thornborough, Councillor Porra, and Councillor Illingworth. And no doubt there will be more, but let's start off with Councillor Khan.
A simple thing, you haven't mentioned the flat sizes and the distribution of flat sizes. Is it all single 1 and 2 bedroom? Is it for single people? Is it for couples? Is it for families? What's the range and what's the provision, and how does it distribute between the affordable and the market?
let me just drop back, sorry. A wide range, broadly speaking. So we've got a range of 1 beds, 2 beds, and some 3 beds distributed across the affordable and the BTR. So let me get, sorry, it's a slight mistake on the right. I have ratios. So we have 38% 1 bed, 57% 2 bed, and 5% of the accommodation is 3 bed. And in the affordable, there's a distribution of 1 and 2 bed, 19% 1 bed, and 81% 2 bed. And that's kind of born out of John's input in terms of mix and such.
The affordable mix has been agreed with the housing officer. So that the affordable mix has been agreed with the housing officer as their preferred mix. Granger see this is quite a unique proposition for them because there's so much green space. So there is the opportunity for some families here, and they think it's kind of like unique for them. So they're looking at in the private that's an orientation towards that.
Councillor Bradman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. My first question, Councillor Khan has asked, which is great, the second is related to that. Are all these dwellings meeting the minimum living space standards? Sorry, you looked as if you were going to say yes. Okay. You said it's brick built, but the appearance appeared to be grey, and I thought that looked. I wondered whether you'd considered the impact of that on the general area and the general character of the area. While we're thinking about appearance, can I ask you to consider the wisdom of putting a sort of pergola structure on the top of an already big building, which might make it look unnecessarily large when it isn't actually that big. And then the third one was, given that this triangular development all faces inward, I'm just wondering what provision you're making to minimise the problems of noise, because that could be quite percussive across the space. And we know elsewhere at CB1 we've had problems with people who have balconies, and then in that particular occasion it's the problem of road noise, which initially wasn't being used, and then when the road was used, suddenly there were complaints about road noise. So I'm just wondering about, one person playing a radio could severely impact the quietness for everybody else. I just wondered what you're thinking about that. And also the other thing was, are these all for rental, or is any element of it for sale?
That's okay.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. So I reflected before on the management model. So we have on-site staff. So the noise issues, we're not dealing with individual homeowners. Everyone who lives in there is a tenant of ours. So they've got duties to respect other occupants within the block, and we do manage that quite well. Sorry, what was your question? Rental. Yeah, 100% rental, as I just touched on. There's no private for sale. We are the owner and operator of the entire estate.
Including the board.
Yeah. Councillor Smart.
Do you use the one in Destin? One question. So you gave some numbers for affordable accommodation, but you didn't give a percentage. So I worked out that you seem to be suggesting 27% affordable, which is above what you have to provide. So can you confirm that it's 27%, which is 62 plus 54 over a 425?
Yeah, Councillor Smart. So the scheme originally, with the way the Section 106 has been phrased, was on the basis of provision in Block B for the units, because that was originally potentially private sale. And so that was the percentage for that. Across the rest, it was built to rent in accordance with the annex in the market strategy, which was 20%. What we've tried to do, there's been some adjustment because of the nature of, we've gone to build to rent, but we've still met the numbers of affordable units in Block B that are required in the plan. we have to submit an affordable housing plan, delivery plan, that has to be agreed, but we've been discussing this provision, the mix of it, where it goes, very closely with the housing team, and are happy with that, Councillor Smart.
Councillor Smart, you wanted to come back again?
So was that yes or no?
To the 27%, I think that is right.
Councillor Thornborough.
You don't have to answer all these questions, but the sort of questions, comments. So, car-free and lots of cycles, can that be per person, not per bedroom? You said you're policy compliant, and I think our policy needs to catch up. Plus visitors, so that would be great. Rainwater, we want to keep rainwater out of the drainage system because the mixed drains cause a lot of problems, and if we can keep it out, the better. So is there a way you could consider recycling the rainwater? Maybe you are for planting. I have a plea for the roof lines. I understand why these are brought down and through the Safety Act, but I think it would be great if there was some more interest in the roof line, even if it was gargoyles and downpipes or something. In my feeling, I don't mind high buildings, but it's the detail at that height. Also, I saw that there was some green roofs. That's great. Would there be any access for residents up there? No, it's just okay. And finally, we're not very keen on single aspect dwellings. Will there, it looks like the plans are single aspect, but maybe you have passive ventilation or something like that. But again, even with passive ventilation, you could have stacks on the roof which articulate the, celebrate some of the technology that we've got. Like old chimneys were the technology of the time. What have we got now? Thank you.
I'll pass a few of those over. Just on the use of the roof. Sadly, once you access the roof for recreational purposes, the Building Safety Act cuts in. So again, we've had to be very careful about how we've used the roof. So we've gone for the green roofs. I'll ask Matthew to deal with the cycle parking, if that's okay. On the water side, you will see on the landscaping plan a very large balancing pond. So we're going to make use of very substantial subs, and that will also serve the purpose of the application that's coming along. So that serves a vital function in terms of rainwater, Councillor.
Right, so just on the cycle parking piece, we are distributed across the site by core. We are policy compliant, as you say, but we do also have a very large provision of visitor spaces as well. So I think over the site in total, we've got over 815 cycle spaces allocated. We've also recently introduced to help with numbers and to help with capacity, a cycle parking pavilion, where as part of the Granger's management, we've got provision for repair, as well as storage. We've also got storage for some of the larger bikes. There's an awful lot of cargo bikes and such like around Cambridge, integrated into sort of the daily patterns of people that are using these spaces. So we've got the opportunity to provide those across the piece, and the Granger management means that those spaces will be very sort of sensibly used, well managed.
Thank you. Sorry, did you want to add further to that?
Chair.
You may even have asked the next question. I think the next I was going to call on Councillor Porrer. I will come back to those wanting to ask supplementary questions later, if I may. Councillor Porrer.
Thank you, Chair. I think other councillors have covered quite a few of mine. I do concur about the greyness at the ground floor level. There's nothing dragging the eye to, I just think that's something to note. I just want to check, is the courtyard in the middle private, i.e. you can only get in with a key? Okay, so no, that is public, and it does seem to have play equipment. That's great. I wondered if you could just talk about the affordable. Is it going to be pepper potted, i.e. distributed tenure blind, or, because I know that's something we're quite keen on. And obviously, talking of sustainable drainage, one of the things we're very keen on, and I know it's part of the emerging local plan proposals, is this idea of having, if you're going to have drain pipes, have them through the balconies so people can have a water butt and pull off water to water their plants, particularly as, for these old flattered developments, that would be important for people. And finally, I was going to mention nursery provision. I don't know what your plans are for Granger, but obviously particularly it's welcome to see you're encouraging families there, but obviously nursery provision on this site is something I think there is a demand for. So I just wanted to mention that. I think my other points have been covered, Chair.
I'll deal with the easy one first. The nursery provision, there was a contribution to the county council, so we made provision within the agreement for contribution towards nursery provision.
So on the affordable, there's two parts to it. So 62 affordable rented units are in one block, in Block B, as per the outline. And then I think it's 54 discounted market rent units, and they are pepper potted throughout the scheme. So.
Right. Councillor Bradnam, I will come back to you, but I think I have Councillor Illingworth next on the list.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for that presentation. So I've got a bit of a list of questions. First of all, is Granger a housing association? And can you tell me what percentage of market rents, the affordable rents, would be? It's quite close to the sewage works. Is it outside the exclusion zone for the sewage works? I live quite a long way further back, and I'm still getting the smell from the sewage works where I live. It looks to me a little bit like an island development. Now, Hartree may or may not happen. How would it have been integrated with Hartree? And indeed, the Crown Estates are thinking of putting housing where we see those grey blocks at the back, as I understand it, there to go. And so how have you planned integration with that? The other one was a very quick mention of heat pumps for hot water, but I didn't see how you were going to produce heating and cooling. Is that going to be heat pumps as well, or a district system? And just one, my little, not quite a bugbear, there were plans in Hartree for signature buildings at the corners, by which signature I think they mean high rise. You seem to have avoided high rise. Any particular reason? For me, high rise means same footprint, more space. That's it, thanks.
I'll let Matthew deal with the design questions. In terms of the rent within the agreement, we have to agree with the City Council, with South Cambs, the rental level against either the lower of the local housing allowance or the 70% of the medium rental at the time. So we get the annual numbers, but the housing allowance, it's a bit early to agree rents now. Let's wait until you're about to rent. So there is clearly a restriction within the agreement as to what the level of rents will be. So that's within the agreement, and we will agree that nearer the time when we're actually ready to actually let the property. So that's already agreed. If you look behind, you can see the Crown. They're helpfully doing the landmark building on the corner for us, and they can deal with the Building Safety Act. You may want to talk about the street and how we're creating that.
Yeah, so we've had quite a few dialogue rounds with the Crown as their thoughts have emerged, and they've obviously, as you say, they're looking at residential on that barrier. The original outline didn't really have particular reference because that was unknown, but in the dialogue we've had, we're looking to turn what was more of a single-sided street to a residential street. So we've got, one of the great things that the outline captured was all of the public realm is very generous, all of the edges are very generous. So we're mimicking the character of other street widths, and some of the street widths that they showed in the earlier presentation today. So we've got ground floor residential on both sides of the street, so there's a dialogue between residents on both sides. We've been talking about traffic flows and also the pedestrian flows, because one of our opportunities here is the routes through the courtyard tack into their planned route through the whole development. So there's a good bit of dialogue which is making our scheme better and helping facilitate their scheme as well. The height, we are Building Safety Act compliant, so we have had to drop. We've kept some of the sort of visual height on the corner on our nose, and we've done that by the over sort of extension of the pergola type, and we've put some of the plant provision. We need very little on roof plant because of the heat pump scenario. But we do have plant provision for the commercial uses, and the major commercial use, which is sized up to sort of Sunday trading size, is at the nose. That's the most sort of obvious place for that retail offering. So we're trying to get a win there. We need plant on the roof. We've dressed it. We've used that to elevate height a little bit. Probably worth maybe Toby just touching on the heat pump point as well.
Yeah. So obviously modern buildings, highly efficient envelope, fairly very airtight buildings. The heat losses from them is minimal. Hot water generation is hot water generation, so there's an air source heat pump to generate that. In terms of the heating, that's done by Direct Electric. Again, all been discussed with the sustainability. They're in full agreement. The key benefit being that by not having central plant, by not having hot pipes distributing around a building 24/7 and heat interface units, you really do help with the overheating, and we're scoring really well on that. And even though we've got single aspect, actually, great results in terms of that overheating provision, mainly because of kit of parts, window, and facade detail.
Shall I just jump in and respond to your query on Granger? So we're a private FTSE 250 PLC, recently converted to a REIT. We have a for-profit registered provider as part of the business, which we use on other JVs, including TfL and other councils.
And the final question is the Hartree question. The comfort I can give you is this master plan that was approved was the consequence of about 4 years of negotiation with the local authority on the understanding that Hartree was coming forward. So it kind of like doesn't turn its back on anything. It was very much part of the wider thinking for the Cambridge North East Area Action Plan areas. If that gives you any comfort, Councillor.
Right, now members, I know Councillor Griffin wanted to ask a question, and I'm coming back to Councillor Bradnam after that. Councillor Stobart, any others? Bear in mind, please, we have 5 minutes left, so as usual, I would be most grateful if you would be quite concise in your questions. Councillor Griffin.
My questions have been asked and answered already.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to ask that you bear in mind the need to use permeable paving in your paved areas, otherwise there is a recharge of water that affects the properties on the other side of the railway at Fen Road, Chesterton, which is also in my parish. And also, really glad to hear about your views of not accumulating heat. But please be mindful that north-facing properties can be quite cold and dark. I know your properties tend not to, but just bear in mind those people on the north-facing side who might actually quite welcome some accumulated heat. Thank you.
So we are actually looking as part of the next steps and as part of the planning submission at the different glazing details so that it's not all the same glazing, that the north elevations do benefit from more heat transfer through, more daylight through, and the south.
That's kind of tuned to the very particular as well as the facade treatment.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bradnam, does that deal with your questions? Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Stobart.
Chair, thank you. And yeah, just a clarification on the heat pump, use of heat pumps and mechanical heating and ventilation. So you said that the heat pumps would be solely for hot water provision. Are these heat pumps going to be mounted on the roof?
No, so in the slide I had to unfortunately skip over. It does show we've got individual utility cupboards. Each of those utility cupboards has got an incoming electrical supply metered, incoming metered water supply, an individual air source heat pump, which will be working with Dimplex on making sure that those are designed correctly. So on the right-hand side there, individual MVHR units providing whole house ventilation. So again, really welcomed by the sustainability team in terms of people having individual control of their environment.
Councillor Khan.
And sorry, direct electricity for heating.
Sorry, the situation I wanted to ask about was the commercial element in it. That you've designed this when you thought Hartree was going ahead, so you've got 425 dwellings. I was wondered how you looked at the viability and how much you've looked at the other areas round about the other side of the road going to the west, which are potentially potential market. I just wondered how you looked at the viability, because it's obviously important that they should be viable, otherwise they won't continue to provide supply.
My colleague in our retail team in Bidwells is advising. He's let all of the coffee shop and co-op and everything. He's also been very familiar with the way that CB1 evolved. So this scheme is part of a larger scheme. So this actually has a commercial street. So the idea of the ground floor is a commercial street. We're trying to size those units at the moment. Matthew mentioned the 12, the Sunday trading hours. We're trying to get that balance between units that are right, that will be attractive to tenants, will be long term. We'll also have the ability to attract the interesting tenants, shall I say, not just the corporates and multinationals, but a little bit of flavour. So we're actually getting specialist Cambridge advice on how it would work moving forward. And a big chunk of this will be the meanwhile uses as well that we put on the site and how we attract people in the short term that allows the permanent businesses to establish and flourish on the site.
Then next, I think, yes, Councillor Thomber wanted to come back again.
Thank you very much for letting me come back. I know from data we've had is that there is a real need for good rented accommodation, and I'm very interested to see how this, how successful the previous schemes are. It's nice to hear that the planning officers have gone to look at what works. Personally, I would really like the opportunity to maybe to do that, to see something that's in existence, and I'd ideally speak to people. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if others would be interested. Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please, yes.
Happy to show you around Nottingham, where we took the planning team. Or is that probably easiest?
I think the retention rate and the turnover rate probably. The other thing that Granger have is an app where we're able to collect a huge amount of data, councillor. That data is really proving useful as to what keeps people there, what makes them happy, what are the things that don't work. So we've got a database of 12,000 tenants that is really proving a useful, valuable data source to the energy uses and how to temper things, and when there's a heat warning, you can warn people about air conditioning and all of these things. So it is, we're probably talking to the person in the country that can give you more data on that than anyone.
Yeah, we're also, we would say 100% occupied across the portfolio. Average tenancy length of 32 months. That's quite important in the rental market. So we have all the data.
Right, well, thank you all for answering those questions. I don't know whether, Richard, there was anything you wanted to sort of sum up your response to those questions, or are you happy that we've dealt with all the questions you've been presented with?
Hopefully we've dealt with answering all the questions. I think I found it quite useful to go through the scheme again, and if there's anything else that comes out of this, such as coming to visit the scheme in Nottingham, we could arrange that. And thanks again for your time. As I said earlier, we're ready to deliver, so hopefully this scheme will come forward. The reserve matters, I think we're aiming to submit in early April, and then we move forward from there. Right. So thanks again.
Members, we do have a protocol for visits in relation to applications that are coming forward, and I'll be asking Philippa later to comment on that. We're going to have a short session after the next agenda item, and Philippa will just remind us the process on that, and we can set that up in the future. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. Sorry. In this first item 5, it does include the Wild Park, and I just wonder, we haven't had any description of that. I assume that's part of this, because it is part of the description.
The reason we haven't laboured on the councillor is it has a full consent, so it's been designed. We're more than happy if Chair wants to indulge for 30 seconds. Yeah.
Now, as we said at the start, we're focusing on the reserve matters and the amendments.
Can I just...
That you mentioned in passing to start off with.
I just wanted
Members, I think we've run out of time. Councillor Bradnam, did you want to...
Yes. I just wanted to check, is the assumption that the people in this 422-5 residential block will have access to this Wild Park, or is that all open to the public in general?
So it's open to the public in general. We will be delivering it as part of our scheme. So it'll be coming forward with the residential phase.
Thank you for that additional
Thank you.
information. Now, we're going to move on to agenda item 6, which is, of course, related. I'm going to give us 5 minutes to just make some adjustments. I know there may be some changes in the team, but thank you very much for your presentation. Committee. Shall we go live? Welcome back to this meeting of the Joint Development and Management Committee on 25th of February. Members, I am keen that we wrap this up about 1 o'clock, bearing in mind that I'm asking you to stay behind just for some short notifications from officers after the meeting. Mike Derbyshire is with us again, and I'll come to you to introduce your team. If you are able to keep it to 15 minutes, bearing in mind the overlap, that would be much appreciated. And members, I will be asking members to keep it to 20 minutes questioning when we've had our presentation. Mike.
Thank you very much, Chair. The presentation is going to be structured with Greg Ellis from Make Architects dealing with 1 Milton Avenue. That actually sets the tone for why we need the multi-storey car park. We then go to the multi-storey car park. Simona from Stripe, she's the senior architect there, and we finish off with Robert Myers, who will deal with how we're putting together the landscaping. Councillor Bradman, it may be an opportunity for a question there on that. So you get a second go. You get a second go. And Andrew Rawlins is here from PJ in case there's any questions on the car parking, which I imagine there will be. So that's enough of me. We can hand over to Greg. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on the non-material amendment for 1 Milton Avenue. So where we are on the master plan, we're outlined in red. And this is the commercial building just to the north, which is just to the right of the built development so far. So that's the station and the hotel and 1 Cambridge Square, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. And we lie just to the south, i.e. left on the image, to the residential development that you just heard of. So this was approved, and we are showing some updated plans that represent two minor changes. One is the removal of the basement car park, more later, and how that implicates us in the design of the building. The other one is there's a slight change in the brief, and we are moving from a wet lab design to a dry lab design. And so what that means really is that these 3 images show the design development. The extant planning permission is the one in the middle, and so we're reverting to the original planning application in terms of number of stories and orientation. So the brick parapet line reduces slightly, which you can see on the right, and also we lose the flues and the flue housing that popped out of the top of the building from the extant planning permission. As I said, the impact of the loss of the basement, firstly, is in cars, and we'll talk about that later, where that's gone in the master plan, but also cycle spaces. So cycle spaces are now all on the ground floor of this building, and in the building itself and in a cycle pavilion to the landscaping directly adjacent to the building. We've actually increased the number of cycle spaces over the extant planning permission and to 392 spaces. We were at 349. And the pre-application feedback that we've had with the officers regarding the bike sizes, the benches, size and configuration of the pavilion, they've all been incorporated in the current drawings. The other thing that was alluded to earlier is the environmental impact of taking these basements out, which we think is really important. So we've done some studies just to see what the impact on this building alone is. And removing the basement represents, just in the substructure and the superstructure alone, about saving over 2,000 tonnes of carbon. When this is factored over the overall building, that's a 12.5% saving of the embodied carbon, so over 3,000 tonnes of carbon. So it's a good news story with regards to the environment. So this is a render of the elevation of the building. This is the elevation that faces onto the residential that we were just talking earlier. And you can see on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, this is the cycle pavilion that has been added in lieu of the ventilation structures that was originally contained in the landscaping for the basement car parking. And if we see that in plan, you'll see that to the top of the page, the landscaping is retained, so we have those lines of trees. We then have the cycleway, which is retained. Where we did have the ventilation structures, we now have that cycle pavilion in the same lozenge shape that is being adopted by the residential development. And also you'll see the white area just below of that is where we have our cycle facilities. So another benefit is
We've removed all of the cycle facilities that were in the basement, and we've brought them to the ground floor. So all of the lockers, all of the accessible cycle spaces are now within the building itself, and obviously all of the showers. So there's a really nice one level from the cycleway through parking the bikes, storage, into the core and into the office. There isn't going down to the basement to come up into the rest of the building. The other benefit, of course, is that we don't have that car ramp going down, and so we've been able to provide more active frontage around the perimeter of the building. So all of the blue space is where we have an increased amount of activity fronting onto all of those pedestrian areas. The rest of the building is the same. It's still a central core scheme. The only real thing that's changed is that the internal structural grid has changed from a dry lab setting to from a wet lab setting to a dry lab setting, but that's in the internal organisation. We still have the level 5 terrace, providing valuable amenity to the occupants. And right at the top, we still have our commitment both to renewables and PVs and biodiversity in terms of a green roof. As I said, the difference in the top is that we've taken off the flues, that additional height with the flues and the flue housing, because we don't require it anymore for the building. So these are the elevations that will form part of the non-material amendment, and it's still that same yellow Cambridge buff brick articulated in a different format around the building with the bronze metal lining and the parapet changing heights as the building steps down as it works to the residential to the west and indeed to the north. And that's the elevation that we saw the render earlier with the cycle pavilion at the bottom in the landscape space. As part of the application as well, apologies, these are very small, but these are kind of like-for-like comparisons between extant permission from key views, both from the east side over from the river and also from the west, from the residential, the other side of the guided busway. And the main difference is that, again, the omission of the flue and the flue housing that poked up at the top previously in the extant paddy permission. I will now pass over to my colleague from Stripe, who is going to talk about the multi-story car park.
Just to set the scene, Councillor Smart, I'm going to disappoint you here. This isn't about buildings. This is an outline planning application. So we talk about the principle, the height and the massing of it. But Simon's just going to run through the principles of the outline and the discussions we've been having with your planning colleagues.
Thank you. I will start with presenting the site plan and the quick analysis we've done to get the basic consideration for the future design approach. Our proposal sits at the edge of the landscape plan, and that was the main drive in defining a hierarchy in elevation treatments. Going through the slides, thank you. We are showing here the hierarchy, the levels we define the buildings. I would have the main level, the open elevation towards the landscape, which we are thinking of treating it in a more open way with either some metal fins or perforated metal, arranged in a pattern which is more open, more rarefied to allow for this permeability between the open green space and our proposal. Going around the building towards the main entrance where the existing road is would be, we will continue with this linearity and the same rhythm of the elevation, though would make it a bit more robust and more private. That would be the second level of the hierarchy, and moving on, the third one we would consider to be the main stair core, which is a distinct vertical element, which though is contrasting with the fluidity of the elevation, it will help with the weight finding and also add a structure in the reading of the elevation. Going around the side to the secondary cores, this will be treated as a more subdued, covered version, even though material of the core itself, it will be more rhythmic and simplistic. It will have the fins going all around the building, incorporating these vertical elements into the design. We looked a lot into how to point out and to make this building sit better in the public realm, we try to make it not as an independent structure, it's more like a complementary and a backdrop for the open landscape, which also looking at the way it was organized, it helped us with defining the position and the orientation and how all the movements, pedestrian and cycle movement, can walk around and approach the building, and it's just the fluidity of the whole thing, trying to be, even though it's important and it will be functional there, but it will be more backdrop, step back behind the nature and the landscaped area. As we said, it's still early beginnings. We were looking in the strategy how these architectural elements could wrap around the building and still keep the transparency. And thank you. Going to the plans. Starting from this design and the open space, we moved at the movement, having the access from the existing road, which would be the secondary elevation. We try to have the design to kind of keep away any vehicular access from the open area. It did help having the adjacent road, which will provide the access. And talking about the access, we are considering to have a dual lane exit entry in the parking. The vehicular point of view, that would be the only access. The circulation would be one-way clockwise. The project is designed as a vertical circulation model. There is that little section sketch at the top. The grid, structurally, it's a simple grid, 5 by 16 meters for the columns. Floors will be just the usual planks we will be using.
I'm just conscious the landscape architect always gives the rough bit.
Yes. Okay, yeah, fair
And
enough.
we can deal with questions. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you, Mike.
Shall I set the scene very briefly? This is a non-material amendments application in the sense that all of the changes that we make, Robert's job is to glue them all together through the landscaping and where possible enhance the landscaping. So you'll see we've taken the opportunity to enhance the landscaping. Simona mentioned the entrance and making that legible. We've used that as an opportunity. There's also some minor tweaks to the road network that were included within that. I'd better let Robert speak, I think, otherwise.
Thank you, Mike. So yes, these various changes to the master plan that you've just heard about in relation to car parking, cycle parking, and the introduction of the multi-storey car park obviously have an impact on the landscape master plan, which is shown here on this slide. And therefore, we will be coming forward with a non-material amendment application to pick up the consequent changes to the landscape plan as a result of all that. And they are fairly minor. But as Mike says, we think there's some quite exciting opportunities that come with it. So on the left-hand side is the approved landscape master plan for Cambridge North. And to the north of Cowley Road, you can see the Wild Park, which is that sort of large green space to the top. And as before, that will continue to provide a lot of the amenity space for the development. So you can see in the centre there is the balancing pond, which is a major component of the SUDS strategy. That will remain. We've made some minor modifications to its shape, but the volume and overall concept remains the same. The Wild Park also includes the allotment provision for the development, as well as quite a lot of the play provision for the residential scheme, as what you might call the wild play. You'll notice on the master plan, where we've got this diagram up, that there is we've deliberately included a strong diagonal link from the residential development into the wild park, picking up that clear desire line. But in essence, all those landscape functions of the wild park remain intact in this revised plan. But we have, obviously, with the multi-storey car park to the west, it creates a sort of better definition for that space, an enclosure from the Hall Road to the west. And the multi-storey car park sits entirely on top of the space that is currently the logistics compound, so a very low value in terms of biodiversity. And biodiversity being the sort of final component of the wild park in terms of providing that net gain for the development. You'll remember that the wild park actually includes this very interesting ecological open mosaic habitat, which arises from the previous use as a railway siding. So it's a very low fertility but high biodiversity habitat, which we're keen to retain where we can, to enhance across that wild park, and to include other planting which has a similar sort of what we're calling a open mosaic mimic character to it. So that's really why it's called the wild park, because it retains the essence of the open mosaic habitat that's there at the moment. So the introduction of the multi-storey car park, we think, creates an exciting opportunity to the south to create a better arrival space. We're calling it a pocket park to the south of the car park, making use of that beneficial microclimate, and introducing a little kiosk as a focal point and to create activity within that pocket park to the south. So that's the consented plan to the left, the current plan to the right. So you'll see sort of in that southeast, to the southeast of the car park, we have this sort of semicircular pocket park, this grid of trees to the south, and picking up desire line routes into the stair core in the multi-storey car park, which is on that southeast corner, picking up desire lines from the residential and from the development generally to the south. So that little public space with the pavilion kiosk in its centre becomes a sort of space through which you will pass to get to the car park, through which you will pass to get to the wild park, and it's closely linked to the play area to it on its eastern side. The other component of the revised proposals is an amendment to the road layout in this position. I'll just pass over to Andrew to briefly summarise what those are.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, so the drawing to the left shows the current proposals for the junction arrangement at the sort of the eastern end of Cowley Road. Because of the proposals to put all of the commercial car parking into a multi-storey car park, that obviously changes the distribution of how vehicles go around the site. And we think that that's a positive benefit for the scheme, because it reduces the commercial traffic in the wider part of the scheme. So the commercial car parking, the vehicles will make a left turn into the multi-storey car park and then obviously exiting a right turn onto the existing Cowley Road. That's required some minor changes to that junction, just in terms of the priority for vehicles using the multi-storey car park. And the proposed road that you see to the east of that junction and to the south of the balancing pond, that becomes a very low trafficked road, basically just taking commercial vehicles and access to each individual building.
Thank you. Just a final point on this slide is that just in terms of these sort of embedding the multi-storey car park into the landscape, we're proposing a generous tree belt to the east, as you can see on this diagram, which sort of reflects the existing trees that we're retaining to the on the other side of the balancing pond. So that's a sort of 18-metre belt of trees to the south to help not screen, but to really ground the building into the landscape and to create some softening of that eastern elevation. This plan just shows a little bit more detail on that pocket park. So you can see the semicircular space, it's about 20-metre diameter, and how it feeds pedestrians through, providing a focus with the pavilion in the centre, feeding pedestrians through to the stair court into the car park, and then onwards into the wild park and the various play spaces within it. These sections, just going back to the tree planting to the east of the multi-storey car park, so you can see the narrowest point there, we have a 7-metre belt of tree planting and 18 metres at its widest as you move out from the building, and we're sort of with understory planting beneath big sort of forest canopy trees and then tapering down as a sort of woodland edge. These are some sort of preliminary sketches for the kiosk building within the pocket park. The kiosk is actually coming forward as part of the multi-storey car park application, but just to give you a sense of scale and how we're imagining that building functioning, it's sort of a simple kiosk with a central servery and outdoor seating and a generous sort of canopy overhang to it. These are just some images to explain a little bit about the sort of aspirations for that kiosk building at the top and for the planting at the bottom. So we will be talking about, as I say, this open mosaic mimic planting, which will by definition be this very drought tolerant but biodiverse planting, lots of plants for pollinators within it. So mimicking the ecological interest of what's there currently on the site. And then just to drop back down onto 1 Milton Avenue, this is just a little bit more detail on the plan that Greg showed. This is the landscape plan at ground floor, so just explaining how that cycle shelter, the cycle pavilion, relates to the ground level planting, the trees, the cycle route through the centre, and the parking at street level. So the principles of the landscape scheme in the public realm are retained, enhanced, but tweaked to suit the characteristics of the new building.
Thank you. We're running out of time. Did you want to make any last comments before we open to questions?
I think it's more important to deal with the questions, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Right. Members, okay, thank you. So we'll start with Councillor Bradner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation again. Can I just clarify, the access to the multi-storey car park, is that to be from the northwest? In other words, the road that currently turns left off Cowley Road at the back, the bend. And I think you were saying all of the access and exit for vehicles would be on that road, whereas the pedestrian access would be at the southern point, as it were. I just wanted to check what size spaces you'll be using for those car park. It seems to me, apart from Tesco's, everybody else seems to be making spaces smaller, and I think modern cars are actually bigger than needed. I'm concerned about, I can't quite read what's happening. The area to the right, so firstly, we appear to be losing a big area which is currently wooded. Some of it is already car park, some of it is wooded on the left-hand side where you're planning to put the multi-storey car park. And so I wanted to know, what is your biodiversity net gain on this part of the site? And also, did you mention a SUD? Because is that what the semicircular area on the right-hand side of the multi-storey car park is? And remembering, as I did fondly, that this was a very good reptilian habitat following the, shunting yards. I think we've probably lost most of that now. And also, is this multi-storey car park intended to be car parking for your residential block and for 1 Milton Avenue, the commercial site? And forgive me, it might be out of your purview, but what will happen to car parking for the railway station? Because as you admitted earlier in your presentation, there is still a need for car parking because the use at Cambridge North has increased dramatically in the way that you described. What was it? I did write it down at some point. Yeah, so what's going to happen about car parking there? And if that's outside your block, then do please say.
Quite a lot to unpack there, Chair. So do you want to start off with the landscape and the loss of the trees, Robert, if that's okay?
Yeah, no problem. So just on the access point, yes, the access for vehicles is all from the west off the Hall Road. Access for pedestrians all from the south through the landscape and the pocket park. On the SUDs, yes, that sort of gourd-shaped space in the centre is, as it was before, is the balancing pond for the development. So that picks up a lot of the SUDs, water in terms of the SUDs strategy across the development. That hasn't changed. And we should, yes,
should make it blue, I think. Make it
and actually, the water level will vary within that, obviously. So you've got the semi-wet, the permanently wet, and the semi-dry. So you'll get those different habitats as you move out of that balancing pond. But that is yes, the SUDS feature. And on BNG and the tree point, so the trees on this diagram is quite useful. The trees in dark green are the existing. On the original master plan, we had retain that belt to the east, to the right of this drawing, and some of the trees alongside the logistics compound. With the introduction of the multi-storey car park, we're still retaining the trees to the right to frame that space. We're replacing the trees next to the multi-storey car park with a belt of new tree planting, which we can actually make more diverse and more ecologically rich than the low-value trees that are there at the moment. I think we'll end up with a bigger belt of trees than we have currently, and obviously in the pocket park and the space to the south, we have some really big new areas of planting, trees and the open mosaic planting again to the south. So that actually increases the amount of planting, and therefore the biodiversity numbers are being crunched at the moment, but we anticipate an uplift in biodiversity net gain across the site, which was already well in excess of the 10%.
Thank you. Members, I have, I think,
Could I just
questions.
ask about what was the answer to the question about car parking for the railway station?
Do you want to deal with that, Andrew?
Yeah, I can deal with that. So in terms of the multi-storey car park you see here, that is providing a like-for-like for the commercial spaces that are underneath each of the commercial buildings, and also the mobility hub. And the mobility hub is part of the master plan, and that would take the 428 spaces that are existing station spaces at the site, and there would be an additional 200 spaces available for the station as part of that mobility hub. But it's not part of this application for the multi-storey car park on the commercial scheme.
This will provide car parking for your Milton Avenue, 1 Milton Avenue.
Yes. So sorry, yeah, that was the other part of it. Yes, so this multi-storey car park, 618 spaces, would be for all of the commercial on the site.
The reason, Councillor, why we included the trips for Network Rail is to show that we can future-proof Network Rail's extra demand when we build the larger car park. So the 420 remains. We've just future-proofed the fact that we can build 200 without adversely affecting the road network.
Thank you. Members, I have questions, I think, from Councillors Khan, Councillor Smith, Councillor Smart, Councillor Porra, Councillor Illingworth. I've no doubt I've missed some out, but please bear in mind that we're intending to close this session at 1 o'clock, so we have a quarter of an hour. Councillor Khan.
Yes, I'm still a bit confused about where the car parking for the station is going to be generally. I mean, is there still going to be some SAP? If there's going to be 200 car parks for the station, one thing that concerns me is to know is safety elements. If you're going to get people returning from the station, it's a long walk from the station to the car park, and entering through the small pocket park, will it be lit? Will people feel safe doing this if they're coming back late at night? Because I feel that might be a concern. If it's not you, if they don't feel safe, they won't use it. And so that's obviously important for you as well.
Just on the safety issue, just as an aside, we had a long discussion with the planners about the entrance to the multi-storey car park. So what we put it is where we think is the shortest, safest entrance. Really useful feedback there. The car park you see at the moment is staying there. So the 428 spaces are staying there until such time we redevelop that part of the site and build a multi-storey car park, which is already approved. We just include those 200 spaces within that because we've relocated the commercial spaces to our multi-storey car park. That becomes a Network Rail enlarged facility. It's approved. All of those matters of safety and everything was discussed at the time that we got consent in the outline application for the hybrid. So hopefully that gives you some comfort. And one other answer, 2.4 by 4.8 is the size of the car.
No, we went for the enlarged option. It's 2.5 by 5.
Ooh, there we are.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Could you tell me what the future use of the temporary logistics area is going to be? Where is the play area? And is the balancing pond, does it have that relationship with you delivering 89 litres per person per day? Is that part of a water recycling system. And I'm very, very sorry, I'm a slow learner. I still have not grasped how where these car parking spaces are at the moment and where they're going to be in the future. And I think if you're going to put all the parking spaces in that mobility hub, you're going to be making people walk a very long way. I mean, I know it's good for people, but it's not the point of the railway station, is it? The railway station is to be convenient for people to come in and use. So you're really intending to redevelop the 428 spaces for the next to the station. If you could just explain it to us, I think the whole committee would probably want to hear the answer to.
So there's the mobility hub is the building just to the north of the Novotel building. So that is the mobility hub there. That was part of the consented scheme. So that was always envisaged to have the Network Rail car parking within that building. In terms of this multi-storey car park to the north, that picks up all of the commercial car parking spaces across the whole of the hybrid scheme. So that's all of the basements under each of the commercial blocks, including the basement under the mobility hub, which was for commercial use. So it takes all of those spaces that were in the basements and puts it into the multi-storey car park to the north. The mobility hub, to say, which is just to the north of the Novotel building, that is the home of the Network Rail car park and is a short distance under the opening between the Novotel building to get to that multi-storey car park structure.
How many are in the mobility hub? How many spaces in the mobility hub and how many
Well,
spaces?
it would be the existing 428 plus the 200 additional spaces for Network Rail use.
So 628 spaces in that building, next to the Novotel.
Yes.
Thank you. And how many spaces are in the new multi-storey?
618.
Which is a like-for-like replacement for the commercial spaces already approved.
Few other questions.
No, Robert's looking at me with horror. The SUD system is part of an overall SUD system for the whole scheme. So the outline planning application is required that the developers join up, and there's a management plan that explains how the drainage system works as a whole and how the individual parcels that come forward work within that overall drainage plan, that drainage management strategy.
You had a question on play.
Councillor Smith.
Play and the logistics area.
Right. Just on the play is divided into two areas. So in the courtyard that you were hearing about earlier from Blockwork, that courtyard garden space has a lot of play stitched through it, from sort of doorstep play to leaps and laps and so forth. And then we have a different sort of play within the Wild Park, which is which is there we go. Which are the sort of, you can just about make out on this plan, but we've got a series of play elements on the loop path that takes you around the Suds pond, the balancing pond. So you can just see we've got some areas of boardwalk which are designed to reference the old railway carriages that were found on the site. We have more kind of natural play using logs, balance beams, those sorts of play elements. So as you can see, as children move around that space, and this is exactly as per the approved layout, they will pick up various elements of play as they move around. So they're both there's a sort of key area right next to the pocket park, and then as you move around that space, they will find amongst the trees and in the landscape other elements of more natural play.
Councillor Smith, what was your query on the logistics itself? Well, a little bit of explanation will help me.
What's the future use?
The future use will be the multi-storey car park. So the multi-storey car park replaces that temporary. That was never allocated for anything in the master plan. It was just left over. We utilise we've got land that we can use for construction.
It's the white land up north of the, or, no, is that?
No, it isn't. So if you look on the plan, you see immediately next to the lozenge shape, it is the area marked green. That is the area. It's just something we deliberately left over not to include within the master plan.
Okay, Councillor Smith, does that deal with your queries? Councillor Smart.
Three things, I'll be brief. So firstly, Wild Park interesting, so well done on that. Fingers crossed on planting and how it grows, and we'll come back to that bit in a minute. So protected and maintained for how long and by whom, and including the play area. Second point is scrapping the basement saves a lot of money as well as carbon. So if you're interested in carbon, or you're interested in cross-laminated timber, you've got a perfectly suited rectangular grid layout structure and a very accessible site to Arctic in CRT from Austria or wherever. And finally, Robert Myers, I presume, this is about going back to, won't be on the design review panel for this item.
Just on the Wild Park, we do appreciate that is already approved. Yeah, please.
We still have to submit details of the detailed landscape, the detailed planting and everything like that, councillors. As a condition, there's a condition on the plan application, and clearly the challenge is to make sure we get the right plants to match that up. You asked another question around the Wild Park, I think, wasn't it? The maintenance. So within the Section 106, because it's B&G orientated as well, we have to submit a 30-year management plan for the maintenance of that B&G space and wild space. We also have to set out, and it's explicit within the Section 106, the management arrangement for the open space before we occupy the first phases of the development. So we have to set out and get agreement with the council on how we're going to manage all the open spaces and the management thereof. But the intention is to set up a management company that deals with that.
You'll be relieved to know that I'm no longer on the design review panel.
Yes, Councillor Smart, I think that answers your questions. You wanted to follow up? Yes.
Well, just to be clear, who's paying for the management? Is it a council or is it them?
It will not be the council. So how we pay it will be the traditional way of service charges and other things, but it will not be a burden on the public purse in any way.
Councillor Porra.
Thank you very much. I just want to check a couple of small things. The kiosk, are you going to have toilets? And if not, are there going to be toilets nearby? You know my normal obsession, but it's important if you're serving food and things and people have hand washing. I noticed you said that there were still 13 accessible spaces, but you are actually increasing the car parking considerably. And as I think Councillor Smith pointed out, if that car park comes forward, they are quite a long way away. So I just wonder if you might want to look at that. So my understanding of the logistics was that's a temporary use and that would be returned to green at the end. Because I'm slightly worried, obviously, when that was master planned, that was a space, that wasn't a large multi-storey car park. So I suppose I'd be quite keen to make sure, I mean, I'm a little worried with the car park myself. I mean, I know it's a car park, they're never going to be beautiful. It's quite blocky. It to me, slightly changes the aspect. You know, it's agreed with, whilst it's a logistics space, it wasn't going to be that big. It's quite blocky. I'm not totally convinced yet. I mean, I presume when you come back, you'll have more details of what it will actually look like. Because my concern is for some of the relatively high quality buildings we've seen coming forward with detailing, that seemed quite out of character to me. I think I'll leave it at that, but I think you'll get my drift.
Just to confirm, it's not a green space, it's just a hardcore hard surface at the moment. It has no value at all. So it was never, unfortunately it's marked as green in the plan, but if I showed you some photographs of it, you would see that it's been used as a compound for many, many years, so it has no value at all. In terms of the car park, Jonathan Brooks is challenging us and saying, within our application, I want to see what your design aspirations are. So he's making sure, and he's working us very hard to achieve a design aspiration. But we'll have to come, there are different sides to it. One is the Wild Park, which is clearly a more important elevation. So there's a bit of a focus on that, greening that up, and then there's the other elevations. But Jonathan Brooks is very much in your corner, and we have to satisfy him, Council.
Just in terms of the disabled bays, Yes, we did look at putting them in the multi-storey car park, but we concluded very quickly that it was far too far away to walk to each of the commercial blocks. So there are, at the moment, there are 13 on-street bays around the site. For 5%, we need 31 bays, and we are going to be providing them next to the commercial blocks. Because we're getting rid of the basement ramps, there is some space on the site for that, and for the Eagle Eye on Greg's presentation for one Milton Avenue, we have got 7 disabled bays for 1 Milton Avenue around the building, which is compliant with the number of spaces for that office development. And we will, as other non-material amendments come forward, and for other blocks, then we will be showing the disabled bays for those blocks.
So previously on 1 Milton Avenue, apologies, we had 3 around in the landscaping. So we've increased dramatically the number of spaces next, as close to the front door as possible.
Okay. Councillor Illingworth and then Councillor Thornborough. And then I think we'll have to draw this to a close.
Thank you. Cycle security. Cambridge North Station has a pretty dire reputation for cycle theft. What security measures are you putting in for number 1 Milton Avenue? What is the, it's not on the top right of the Wild Park, there's a green sort of blocked area, the top right there. Is that allotments? Oh, right, thank you. And the balance pond, is it, does it sit there by itself, or is it connected to, I think it's the first drain, the first public drain that comes down from the Science Park? Thank you.
Yeah, just in terms of the balancing pond and the first public drain, yeah, there's a section of culverted, the original first public drain that goes just to the south of the balancing pond, and there'll be a controlled discharge into that from the balancing pond. The balancing pond, isn't it, sort of the last SUDS feature of a series of SUDS features throughout the development.
Yeah, in terms of, so we discussed this at length with the planning officers. So all of the cycles for the occupants of the building of 1 Milton Avenue are within secure areas. So that's either inside the building itself, or that's within the cycle pavilion, which is accessed via locks. It's a secure, lockable place.
Okay. Councillor Thornborough.
Yeah, I'm interested in the landscaping at height on the building that you had. I think it's great for people the well-being of people working to be able to get outside, not just at ground floor level, but at height that you've had. Oh, I think that was the commercial building. Sorry, not this one. I'm slightly concerned about overshadowing from the car park on the impact on the landscaping. And sorry, I didn't comment. And going back to the commercial build, that one, I'm interested, it'd be interesting to see if there was the ability to spill out onto pavements, for eating outside. You know, it helps draw people in, opening up the windows in the summer, so there's a kind of internal, inside, outside space like we've got since COVID is really nice. And I think that's really popular. When I saw this image, I thought, oh, you've got a little outside cafe there that could be linked with something inside, but it's the bike store. But anyway, it's just comments, really. Thank you.
I think, yeah, just to underline that, actually, we've been working extensively with Robert, and so the landscape terrace on level 5 is really quite large. We've found since COVID that the ability to get out is really, really important, and that should not be just reserved for the very top floor for the people in the boardroom. So we've tried to move it down more into the middle of the building. The other thing is that on the ground floor of the building, we have this wonderful landscape space to the north. So yes, we do have the cycle pavilion there, but there are also additional landscape spaces and seating. Plus, we've also pulled the building line back, which you can see in the image. to create a colonnaded space to encourage spaces of shelter as well. So it's not a hard edge, it's more of a transition between the inside and the outside.
Could you just show some of the sun off? This is just a quick running answer. The landscape, you see the direction of the sun. It will be a very, very sunny spot. So it will be not shaded, fortunately, by the. So it'll be a lovely sunny space for people to spell out onto.
Right. That brings us to the end of this session. Mike, I don't know whether you have anything you wanted to say just to wrap it up.
The reason we've come forward with the multi-storey car park is it is a critical piece of infrastructure to make this viable and allow us to develop the next phase of this development. So everyone's worked so hard on it. It is challenging times at the moment, but the multi-storey car park is the key piece of this jigsaw. And this is the most important element of Cambridge North in terms of if you don't have your front door here, the science park and everything and all the connectivity in the first presentation disappears because you've got to somehow get from the station through a desert through to the areas beyond. So this is key. And if we can get this up, you've heard the Granger are keen to go, if we can get this car park approved, we will be starting at the end of this year. And that will give us the ability to fund and get going with the rest of the commercial buildings on the scheme.
Right. Thank you very much for that. We will shortly be coming back to this, clearly. Let me just take the opportunity to thank you all very much for your time, not only today, but engaging with planning officers. And Robert, if I could also take the opportunity to thank you for all your engagement with the design panel. We do really appreciate the work that these design panels do. It's very important for us in assessing applications and ensuring that they have been improved where possible. So thank you all very much indeed. That ends the public session, and I think perhaps, let's just see. Yes, I think we can go offline now.